The atmosphere is building here in the city of Bruges for the 95th running of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the first of the Belgian classics of the year, the Tour of Flanders. Hello everybody, I'm Phil Liggett, alongside me Paul Sherwin, and welcome to this World Cycling Productions video of the Tour of Flanders. Yes, this is the Belgians' biggest sporting day of any year. The boys are warming up behind because, believe it or not, it is coming up 8 o'clock in the morning. The race doesn't start for nearly 2 hours, and yet the crowd is already very big. By the end of the day, nearly 200,000 people will have watched this race, and of course many, many more on television. Paul, why do they keep coming to the Tour of Flanders?
Well, it's such a special race. You know, it's not a question of just cycling fans coming out. It's grandma, grandpa, everybody wants to be part of what is going to be Party Central. And I think there are going to be a lot more than 200,000 people out today because the Belgians feel that they can win this race. Yes, Fabian Cancellara is the outstanding champion, but you've got Tom Boonen and a man who I think is in great form, the French-speaking Belgian, Philippe Gilbert. Yeah. He wants to win this race.
Well, Gilbert, if he were to win it, would be the first Walloon-speaking Belgian, that's the French-speaking part of this country, to win this event, believe it or not. But we think we need to look nearer home, perhaps to Tom Boonen. But why not go to Switzerland? Fabian Cancellara is the defending champion. He's already advertised the fact he wants to win this race for a second successive year. Now, the Belgians have won this race on 66 occasions of the 94 editions. Nearest to them is Italy, who've only won it 10 times. And the Swiss, until Cancellara, well, it was almost 90 years when they last won it with Henri Souter.
It was, but I think we're looking at the course, Phil. This is a standard course. Starts in Bruges, heads down towards the south. And as I always say, for me, the race really begins once we get to the Old Quaremont. But everyone knows that the big decision climbs are the two right down towards the end. The Mur de Grammont, which is a beast of a climb. And, of course, the final climb of the day, the Bosberg.
Yes, and Paul said all that with feeling because, of course, he has ridden the Ronde van Vlaanderen. All right, well, Paul's going to go away. He's going to wait for the riders, go into the square, talk to a few, and then we'll join the action.
Well, Jonathan, it's going to make for interesting tactics out on the roads because really you can count on 3 men in the finale.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Heinrich and Tor are certainly strong enough, and then Tyler is showing, with each passing race that he's getting closer and closer to being, a lot more than just a pure sprinter. So, we've got some interesting tactics to play tomorrow, but of course there's other strong riders as well.
A lot of people are talking about Tyler Farrar not only as being one of the great sprinters coming out of the United States, but the next classics rider.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly has shown to me, against Velbegem and, and Wergem before that he has the ability to go over these short climbs pretty handily. I mean, over the top of the Old Quaremont, he's placed, 10th, 15th in the peloton. So he knows what he's doing on the short cobble climbs for sure. He's got the power to do it.
Now, how do you manage this? Because so many teams in the past have had multiple leaders, and it creates problems.
We've been dealing with this since Milan-San Remo, and the Tyler Tor and Heinrich have actually gotten closer and closer because we've pretty much been living together since then. I think before Milan-San Remo there was a lot of talk, but that race didn't go that great for us. I think they all realized, okay, wait a minute, we need to stop worrying about each other and we need to start worrying about, the competition. And from that point forward, I mean, starting at Wergem, where Heinrich absolutely sacrificed himself for Tyler, and, going into Tirreno where Tor, let out Tyler for a sprint. I mean, I've seen there's a much better cohesion between the three of them, and quite frankly, I'm more worried about the competition than I am about any sort of inter-team rivalry.
If you're coming into 25 kilometres ago, 16 kilometres ago, let's say, the Mur de Grammont, group of 25, you've got 3 riders. What are you going to do?
If we're so lucky as to have that happen, then we're going to win the race. That's what we're going to do.
Well, George, everybody's talking about Fabian Cancellara being the outstanding favourite. How do you beat a man like that?
It's tough. I mean, the race he had last week was very impressive. We all watched it on TV and saw how strong he was. But this is the Tour of Flanders. There's so many things that can happen along the road it's not a sure thing that he's going to win, and we all have to play our cards right.
But this is one of those races, 2 big races of the year that you really love, and Tour of Flanders is one of them.
Absolutely, one of the only races that I get nervous for now, and it's hard to really explain how difficult the race is. I mean, it's a battle the whole day long. It's 7 hours of full concentration and lots of pain in the legs. So it's one of the most special races on the calendar.
And an amazing number of people who turn out to watch this race. It's like the Super Bowl, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So many people watching along the road here at the start. It's almost a national holiday here in Belgium, and the race gets in a tremendous amount of respect here in Belgium and all over the world, and we're excited to be here.
Well, Tour, everyone's talking about Cancellara is the man to beat, but Team Garmin-Cervelo, you've got 3 men in the box.
Yeah, I mean, we're a really strong team today, so I think we all have good form. So I think we just have to work well together and play our cards right. So then we should be there.
It's always difficult to have 3 men. How are you going to play it out on the running towards the final?
We're just going to see. It's a long race. A lot of things can happen. So we just have to be up there and race smart, and then I think we're worked out by itself.
The gun goes off. These are earlier as the riders moving away out of the Grote Markt, or the Great Market, the big marketplace. Beautiful square here, famous now for the film made a couple of years ago in Bruges. This is where it was all filmed, and the riders in no hurry to get out of town. You can see from the aerial shots from the helicopter what a beautiful town this is. It's the capital of the lace industry, but it really is one of Belgium's big sporting and big tourist attractions.
Well, in the medieval times, this city actually used to be on the coast, but then the area silted up, and in fact Zeebrugge, which is the twin name, is actually on the coast, and I think that's why this town has been so well preserved, because it never was subjected to the development of the modern world.
The champion of Belgium, we caught a glimpse of him there, Stein de Volder. Watch out for him. He's got a good reputation in this event, but he's the first cyclist in Belgium to win in the same year both the national time trial and the national road race titles.
Leif Hoster having a few early problems, and best place to have these early problems. Philippe Gilbert there, Phil, sporting a rather new radio. I suppose it's a good thing to look at as he's riding alongside Radio Shack on the far side, and it looks like McEwen.
Well, they're still under neutralised formation as they head out towards Outer Ring Road, and then they'll be underway. And Cancellara, one of the last riders to sign in, has finally been brought through the field towards the front here. I didn't see the rider in the front, but it might well have been Stuart O'Grady. He's the man designated to look after. In fact, it's Dominique Clemmer who was the man alongside him there. But O'Grady is the man that Cancellara will rely on as they get into the tough section of this course.
Well, O'Grady is a man who's been down on the ground so many times throughout his career, but he's always been able to bounce himself back up to the top of his form, and he is very dedicated today, Phil, to Fabien Cancellara. This whole team today taking part in the Ronde van Flanders is riding for one man, and that is Cancellara.
It was good to see Leif Hoster there. Facial injuries in the 3 days of Depana, but he's managed to come in. He was listed as a non-starter today, but he's made it, because good luck to Leif. 3 second places in history. I think I said earlier he won the race. He's never won it. That's the big talking point. He's had 3 second places, and boy, he conferred one of those would be fine for him. Sean Kelly in his day was the greatest cyclist, world #1 for 5 years. He also never won this event.
Well, you mentioned earlier Claude Criquelion. I think that's the year that Sean Kelly could have won the Tour of Flanders, but Criquelion and Kelly have been in the same team for many occasions, and I have a feeling that Kelly just didn't chase down Criquelion because everyone was watching the big Irishman.
Very nice to see the Garmin-Cervelo team right on the front there in numbers on the Paddestraat, which is a long 2 kilometre section of cobblestone roads. Very difficult. This is Gartis Smukulis of HTC High Road, who's getting the first feel of the cobblestones by the look of it, and he's not enjoying it.
No, you get a chance to see just how bad some of these roads are. We always talk about the hills of Flanders, and that's where the race is decided, but in between the hills there are some very long sections of cobblestone, some of them up to 4 kilometres long, and there's a stack at the back.
A little bit of a wrestle with the back wheels here.
Well, this is very much what happens when you see riders in a race like the Tour of Flanders, because the cars can be so far behind that very often you will have teammates will pass wheels across. There's a Liquigas rider waiting there, and that's obviously because that was Paolini who had the problem.
Now, just looking here at the field, they're getting onto the net. As you can see, there's a breakaway on. We'll give you pictures of that at the moment. We don't know who is in that breakaway because these are live pictures, and we're showing you early stage of the race. There are 138 kilometres to go just now of the 258.
Just caught a glimpse there of Robbie McEwen on the left-hand side, Phil. What a showman he is. Although he's an Australian, he lives right in the very heart of Flanders, and in fact is sporting today a pair of socks with the Flemish lion on them.
A man of Flanders indeed. He lives in nearby Brakel at the moment, and you know his win total, and I guess it's which record books you read, but he stands at the moment at 198 by my reckoning. He needs 2 more wins for that magic 200. There he is, and he could do with a great report here, because he's not a man that's done very well in the one-day classics. Just looking down at the breakaway. Now we've got one of the riders just off the back here.
Well, just here it gives you a very good chance to see the technique that a lot of riders will try and adopt on the cobbles. There's nearly always a smooth part towards the right hand or the left hand side, and you've got to try and ride along that, but you do take enormous amounts of risks. The difference, if you see the riders riding a tempo at the front end of the main field, but it really is being dictated into a very high speed at the back end of the peloton.
I must say the Radio Shack team colours here, they really do stand out. But Cervelo have got themselves a plan here. The first one is to keep themselves out of trouble by riding strongly at the front. They do have those 3 riders with a great possibility, Heinrich Hausler, Torhushoff, Tyler Farrar, who've got the undoubted strength to be in at the kill, providing they don't get messed up on the cobblestones on these narrow roads. That's the big risk, isn't it, Paul? The narrow roads, and as you can see, always a huge crowd.
Well, massive crowds for the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Quite possibly, people are saying up to 600,000 people may turn out. Just looking at the carnage at the back, and that's what these flat cobblestone roads do in the Tour of Flanders. You have a lot of riders who don't have the power to ride over the cobblestones, because cobblestones are not ridden with suppleness. It's really using a big gear and flying over them, if you can, at close to 50 kilometers an hour.
Well, I've never seen so much of Robin McEwen so early on in the classic race, but he's really feeling frisky today at 136 kilometers from the finish. We're getting our first glimpse of the breakaway on the left of our picture here now. Now, I can tell you in the first hour, the average speed was 50 kilometers an hour. That's 31 miles an hour before these boys finally got clear. Hunt, Hammond, Van Dijk and Mitchell Docker in the breakaway.
Well, it's good to see Jeremy Hunt getting himself into the breakaway here. A last-minute call-up to Team Sky when he was also involved in the possibility of that Australian team that was going to be formed during the winter months, then all of a sudden found himself on the sidelines. And I do believe that he is a great professional bike rider, and it was nice to see him getting a ride in the Tour de France last year.
I'll tell you what, that's a nice little move there by Garmin Cervelo to get Roger Hammond in the breakaway. He is a man for the classics. He's come so close in his career. He started out life as a brilliant cyclocross rider, but he converted to the road, and he always does well on roads which simulate cyclocross riding, really, the winter sport, riding over the mud and cobblestones of Belgium in the month of April. He's got a great series of results, and he was 7th in this event last year, so they put a really good man out on the attack.
That could be useful a little bit later on as well, because Garmin Cervelo, I think they really are looking to do something special in this race. They've got 3 heads of state, 3 riders who they really believe in. Of course, Torhushoff being the most experienced. But, you know, Tyler Farrar over the last couple of years, despite the fact that he's developed into one of the top sprinters in the world, I think is also developing, Phil, into one of the good classics one-day riders.
Just look how narrow these roads are here. This is so typical of Belgium. It makes for terrific bike racing, but you cannot drop your guard at all. It looks as though the Euskaltel boys, Armendia was the boy at the back, and it looks as though he's got Cazot with him here. They're not enjoying life at all. They're trying to get back on also from this crash. This is a Shalami from the Lampre team. Desperate moments here. You're seeking out the smoothest stretch of the pavement to try and get quickly onto the tail of the peloton.
Well, it really puts it into perspective. When you see the front of the main field, these guys look as if they're just riding tempo. There's Tom Bonen just peeking into the picture there, and the man in front of him for Quick Step is Gert Stegemans, who has moved back to, I suppose, his home team after having a little sojourn on Radio Shack.
Yes, and HTC's Matt Goss right on the sharp end. He's a man for this course as well, the first Australian ever to win the opening classic of the year, Milan-San Remo. He's had a tremendous season, and it looks as though he might have a little bit of a shunt here. There's a bottle rolling loose, or maybe they are just queuing up to get through the barrier gap.
Well, these guys are all over the road, and it's these cobblestone sections before we start to get to the climbs that make it that little bit more difficult as well, because this is a wearing down process, and all of the big climbs, as far as I'm concerned, 16 of the 18 climbs are in the last half of the race, the last 120 kilometers.
Well, I'll tell you, the way they're riding this course just at the moment here, they're not going to let that breakaway run very far. 6:24, but when you've got a rider in that breakaway of the quality of Roger Hammond, and Mitchell Docker is a young Australian who is really coming into his own now. He's only 24 years of age, but he got 5th overall in a 3-day race in this region, the Tour of West Flanders last year, and that's an indication he really loves racing in this part of the world.
Well, everybody's very keen to try and get to the cobbled climb sections of this course in the first part, and that's why you can see one or two riders splitting off the front end of the main field. That move was started by Martin Jalingi of Team Rabobank. I didn't think, looking down the Rabobank start list this morning, that it had an extremely strong team, but they are motivated for races in this part of the world. And these roads here, despite the cobbles being very dangerous, these roads that we're looking down on now, Phil, are really difficult to ride on because they're made of slabs of concrete, and you see that line just down the right-hand side and right down the middle. There is very often what the riders call Death Valley, and it's a part where there is no cement joining the two parts, and I've seen many a rider get his wheels stuck in that and go down nastily.
Very easily done, and as I say, you've got to remain concentrated here because road conditions change very quickly in Belgium. Now normally, of course, you can only ride down this road if you're on a bicycle on those little cycle paths either side. You're not allowed to ride on the main section of highway at all by law. So it's a free day for the boys today, and as we say, there's some 600,000 spectators enjoying this on the roadside, many millions more, and that's rather sad because that's Kevin Van Imp, and he's got a flat tyre.
Well, he pulled up a little bit too quickly there because, in fact, his team car was caught a little bit unawares, and they actually pulled up just past him, almost getting rear-ended by one of the other team cars. It's amazing how close the team cars actually drive together and how few accidents there are between the cars because the majority of the drivers are themselves ex-professional racing cyclists.
Another tricky traffic circle there as they split up and get round it safely. But the pressure's reflected there in the breakaway because we're down to 6 minutes now. Those 5 riders out in front.
There's Bernie Eisel sitting very comfortably in 3rd position there. He may well get a free card to ride for himself here this afternoon. A former winner of Gent-Wevelgem. That's him on the left-hand side in the white jersey of HTC.
133 kilometres covered at the moment. And the race is confirming the gap as we see 5:59 come up. I can hear the race referees saying it is 6 minutes 20. Either way, only 20 seconds in it. And I would think while these boys are piling on the pressure here, it is going to keep on reducing by just that little bit. Well, Cadell Evans, who had a brilliant win, the Australian, on Team BMC in the Tirreno Adriatico stage race, is at home watching this on television today, and I bet he's rather delighted about that. But he's expecting a result from the boys. George Hincapie, Alessandro Balan, 2 boys that could deliver today. The pressure is on, Paul. Look at the split here.
Well, everybody's really trying to warm this up a bit because they know very shortly we'll be getting into the next section of hills. At 133 kilometres to go to the finish. We're in the area around Brakel, and most of these riders know Brakel extremely well. It used to be the home of Peter van Petergem, who's actually been brought on board to coach 1 or 2 of these riders in how to ride over the cobblestones.
Well, one better than Van Petergem, who's triumphed in this race a couple of times. Now that split is going to take a little bit of chasing to try and heal up here. 5:49 the gap on screen, 132, still quite a way to go.
Well, the reason they're warming up like this is in a kilometre or so time we've got the 3rd climb of the day, and that's the Reichelberg. It's not really very long, at around about 800 metres, but it does peak up at 9%, and that's why everyone's getting just a little bit nervous.
Looks like Sepp van Marke from the Garmin Cervelo team there on the front. He slipped off the back now. This is so typical though. Each time there's a hill on the horizon, the pace shoots up to 50-55 kilometres an hour to stop riders changing position. The boys at the front do not want them to be on the front. They want to stay there and hold because the roads invariably are extremely narrow as we head into Strijpen. And again, the riders essing underneath the church here in this lovely little town. Everybody delaying a visit into the church as the Ronde van Vlaanderen, or the Tour of Flanders, goes past. That gap is coming down alarmingly quickly.
Well, once we get into the next section of climbs, Phil, at around about 80 kilometres to go, and that's always my favourite part of the Tour of Flanders, the climb of the Oude Quaremont. That's where we'll see that time advantage, currently at around about 5.5 minutes, get axed because of the speed that the main field will want to get to the Quaremont, because everybody knows that's a very important strategic climb.
Sky, the boys in black there, that's Edvald Boysen Hagen from Norway. And he's also listed amongst the men who might today, and he's in the right position. He's checking everybody that comes up on his right shoulder. They've still got this very nice split going as they get into the narrow roads for the climb.
They won't like this either, because they don't mind a small group of 3, 4, 5 riders getting off the front end of the main field, but then all of a sudden when you're getting a 15, 20 man group, that is dangerous, and that's why we've seen the reaction here coming from the main field.
Well, we're not getting too much as far as the breakaway is concerned. There are 5 riders in the lead. You can see the gap has come down by just on a minute since we started. But the gap isn't so important. But as I say, they won't want to allow Hammond to go too far ahead. And Jeremy Hunt, the evergreen, Paul, he's 37 years of age. Well, he is 37 years of age right now. And he was 6th in the Tour of Qatar, so he still got it in the legs. Look at this crowd here. This is so typical of a Sunday in Belgium, the first Sunday in April, as always.
Oh, there's a crash here on the left-hand side.
He just simply ran out of road there, and he had to put it on the floor. It's a rider from Vacances Soleil who has gone down, so it's Jens Muris who's gone down. Good rider too.
Well, he was trying to move up on the outside there, Phil, taking the risks of riding down the gutter. Everybody wants to get to the front of the main field because they know there is another climb on the horizon. That's the Reichelberg. And just look at this. It's just over on the left-hand side. And I did tell you a little earlier just how dangerous that Death Valley is.
He was in the valley and he had nothing to do but roll up his bike. And he won't have time to waste there because this peloton is moving just now.
No, it certainly is, and I just caught a glimpse of the riders in that front split. There's some dangerous men in that front split. You've got Matty Wilson, who's managed to get himself into that move, but also Andre Greipel.
Yes, a lot of people would discount Greipel as a contender for this event. He's a sprinter, pure and simple. But we'll see. They were going back up to the leaders here now, all 5 of them. And they're still not looking. That's Mitchell Docker sat on the left of our picture with skill. 800 meters this climb, 4%, so it's not too steep, but it is certainly narrow, and this in itself is a real problem for the riders.
Well, that's the rider we were talking about earlier, Jez Hunt, on the back there with the Team Sky colours, the white spot in the middle with the blue line down it, and Roger Hammond just in front of him on the left-hand side for the American team Garmin Cervelo.
Yeah, they've got themselves well organised now. The experience of Hunt is worth it because...
Just having a look, it's actually a bit of a novelty this year. We're looking at Jonathan Voorters on the right-hand side, and in fact the team manager that they've brought in for the Classics, Peter van Petegem, sitting on the left.
For the next climb. So we have a few kilometers now to...
Yes, and it is Van Petegem on the left who's conducting affairs here. Jonathan, the director sportif, is the driver today. Looking pretty calm out there. This is not a calm day for the motorcar drivers. It is very difficult to hold your position behind the riders. Never mind how the riders get on up front.
Well, I would say in his time, Peter van Petegem, Phil, was probably one of the specialists of these cobblestone races. Looking here at Alessandro Balin, a former world champion, but also a former winner as the Giro di Flandria, as they say in Italian.
No, he was absolutely the man, Van Petegem, when it came to it. Now what's happened
He just had a little, well, that was a replay of a little problem he had just a few moments ago at the side of the road, but didn't catch him unawares, and he's got himself back onto the front of his bike quite quickly. But this is that small group starting to get off the front end of the main field, and I think this could be rather dangerous if they don't pull him back. But it's having a massive effect on the advantage of the 5 men at the front, who at one stage were 6.5 minutes clear. Now they're inside of 5 minutes.
Just looking back there at Van Petegem in the Garmin Cervelo team car. He's 38 years of age now, but when he retired, his last race really of note was 4th place in the Tour of Flanders itself. And he did ride Paris-Roubaix a week later, but he was disqualified because he was one of those riders caught in that very controversial closing of the railroad crossing just before the finish, and he didn't stop when the barriers came down, so he was kicked out along with a few riders.
Well, you know he's going to have to. I believe Hoster was one of the other riders in that incident. Zelingi is a very aggressive rider, but this move here, Phil, could start to look rather dangerous, because when you've got riders like Andre Greipel and Gert Stegemans in a move like this, a move which is around about 18 to 20 riders, it's going to be very difficult to pull back. In fact, look at that gap. It's probably now already 20 seconds.
Well, what it will do, I think, will close down the breakaway a bit earlier than they may have thought here. There's still a long way to go at 129 kilometres. The breakaway, by the way, the full list is Roger Hammond and Jeremy Hunt. I can't remember when two British riders was in a breakaway in the Tour of Flanders. The last British winner, by the way, Tom Simpson, exactly 50 years ago today when he won. And that's the only time a British cyclist has ever won the Tour of Flanders. Also up there is Mitchell Docker, Stefan van Dijk and Sebastian Turgot.
Well, at 129 kilometres to go, we have got the climb of Reichelberg behind the 5 leaders. These riders have still got to get themselves to it. But then after that, there's another very difficult climb as well at 119 kilometres to go, and that's the Carpathia. And that's a climb of a kilometre, again with a maximum gradient of 9%.
Well, these boys are getting themselves a nice little group here. And Bernard Eisel, third in line, HTC High Road. There he is, having a drink. He is the man getting his nose out front very early on today and relishing the moment, I think, because it must be very special for a top professional to race in Belgium on this day in Flanders. It is the biggest race in the country. It is, in fact, the biggest sporting event Belgium has in any sporting year.
Well, Eisel very happy with his presence in this move. About 4 riders from the back. You can just notice one of the Garmin-Cervelo riders. That's Matty White. He was one of the men who was very quickly onto the back of this train. This is starting to look now like a very solid group. They're starting the climb here, and this is the Reichelberg. At 4% is the average gradient, but it peaks out on a couple of occasions at close to 9%. That's the blue helmet there. You might just notice on the Garmin-Cervelo rider of Matty Wilson. Greipel dropping back a fraction.
Well, they're saying that second group is 20 seconds ahead of the peloton. That's a very good start here. They did not repair the damage on the good roads. It won't be easy on these narrow roads here. And look at this, Stuart O'Grady's on the front now for Leopard Trek.
Well, he's also on the front for Fabian Cancellara, because that's what he said he wanted, the Belgian champion just going through there. And that is a good indication that these riders are taking these early climbs extremely seriously. But Fabian Cancellara has already called his team Leopard Trek up to the front end of the main field.
Yes, because I don't think he likes the composition of the chase group. I don't think he'll worry over much about the front end of the race. The 5 riders clear just now, but he will be concerned. And of course he wants to keep himself away from the problems of the heart of the peloton.
Well, just going around that corner, Jez Hunt, he's ridden in this part of the world many, many times before. He likes these kind of races. Being relayed there by Roger Hammond, former British professional champion and also former British professional cyclocross champion as well. It's a 5-man breakaway. They've got 4 minutes and 18 seconds over that front split, which is still 20 seconds faster than the main field. The main field are really going to have to react. Mitchell Docker setting the pace at the front. The young Australian now, who is really progressing into the big time after a couple of seasons with Skill Shimano. All willing to work together here now. Jeremy Hunt. And just tucked in there the very crouched figure of his teammate, which is Roger Hammond. Well, Jeremy Hunt,
not a teammate now, as you know. They're on rival teams, Garmin, Cervelo and Sky.
Yeah, because of the demise of the Cervelo test team and forming into Garmin Cervelo, Jeremy Hunt was one of the riders caught out in the crossfire, and he was very lucky to get picked up during the transfer season in the winter by Team Sky.
That was a good move indeed. These are the chasers, and you've noted in the group there is Tyler Farrar, Gert Stegemans, and Mark Cavendish has made the split. I haven't seen him, but they're saying he is in this group. 19 riders in the breakaway, Boysenhagen. That's why this is why Cancellara is a little bit concerned, because there are some names here who could go the distance.
Well, one rider has managed to get in there from Leopard Trek, and that's the son of the former world cyclocross champion Tom Stamsteider. And I don't think that will be the right combination. You can see the front end of the main field now is made up by Leopard Trek for Fabian Cancellara.
Yeah. Breakaway containing a sprinter like Cavendish. It will be a present coming his way if he can hang on in there. The gaps now 25 seconds, so they've stretched a little bit on the peloton despite the work being done by Leopard Trek. They'll just Well, keep it steady, keep the race in proximity if they can, and wait to make moves on these small climbs.
Well, I say, Phil, that Mark Cavendish this morning, despite the fact that he's one of the great sprinters of the world, was very excited to be participating in this event. Just down to the right-hand side there, we're taking a peek once again into the Garmin Cervelo team car. Peter van Petegem is having a lot to say on the radio.
I was thinking the same thing. I think, how annoying is that in your ears? But he might be saying something about early days. There's still 125 kilometers to go. Combination's good. I would think that Garmin Cervelo right now feeling very pleased with the way this race has unfolded just to this point.
Well, this front group now, Phil, is stretching out that gap over the main field. It's 25 seconds, and I think they're getting themselves extremely well organised. And there's some big powerhouses. 3 or 4 from the front there is Stegeman's. That's him in the quick-step jersey, blue and white colours. A very strong sprinter. A number of the teams have got multiple representatives in there as well, including Vacances Soleil, who've got about 3 riders in this group.
Well, with 19 riders and a lot of teams represented, it looks as though all of the pressure has been swung immediately onto Leopard Trek. And, you know, it makes me think the boys know the strength of Fabian Cancellara, and he's coming in with such a big pedigree. The only way to beat him is to outmaneuver him.
That's what a lot of people were saying at the start line this morning, Phil, talking to 1 or 2 of the team managers. They said, yes, Cancellara is the big pre-race favourite, but we have our own tactics. And I think the idea is to wear his team down as quickly as possible. That's Stuart O'Grady there in second place. He looks hardly ruffled at all, getting the job of work done of pulling back that split.
Well, I'll agree, he looks hardly ruffled, but he knows what has to be done now. This is it. This is a very serious split. It shouldn't have been allowed to happen. It has, and now they're going to have to do all of the work here. They've got to bring back that 19. I think the 5 would probably come back as a matter of consequence because they're chasing those 19 riders.
No, they certainly are. They're getting themselves organised very quickly, Phil, to pull these back. They realise the danger of a 15 to 20 man split getting away at the stage of the race like this.
124 kilometers still to go. That is 77 miles still to race here, so it's still a long way to go. And a big peloton down there, but none of them willing to help now because you've got some 18 teams up front who have no reason to chase right now.
But look at O'Grady here. This is a man who knows how to put the bit between his teeth, and he's got this main field now stretched out into a very long line. They want to pull this race all back together. Before we get to the really strategic part of the race, which I say every year, Phil, is the Older Quaremont. These riders know how important it is to have the whole of the main field go together into that part of the race.
Leopard Trek, the new team on the block this year. They got off to a sluggish start, but they're making amends now. They've had a couple of nice victories, not least Frank Schleck, who triumphed in the Criterium International, and also Cancellara himself in the Grand Prix E3. Now they've got to deliver. They won a big classic victory, of course, and you can tell by the length of that peloton as we swing around the corner. There is the group of 19 riders.
And it's still 30 seconds between the 2 groups, despite all of that work being done by Leopard Trek. This is Jalingi in the orange jersey from Team Rabobank. He's the man who started the move, but all of a sudden there appears to be a little bit of disorganisation, and that's because the legs are starting to sing to the riders.
That's not what they want to see. Hagen, Boyson Hagen here on the left in the black colours of sky, looking around all the time to see what they're going to do about it. The boy from Leopard Trek is just sitting at the back. He's under orders, I'm sure, not to assist in this attack. But you've got people like Cavendish, Isa, and the other sprinter from Garmin Cervelo, Tyler Farrar, in this move.
Well, it is a dangerous move, and that's why the main field really does have to react. And you will have noticed that if it's only Leopard Trek working on the front end of the main field, Fabian Cancellara doesn't have too many mates in this race right now.
I think he would have expected that somehow, because everybody has a huge respect for the Swiss rider, but he's there to be beaten, and he certainly advertised the fact he is the #1 for the race today.
Well, in 15 kilometres, Phil, the reaction in the main field has knocked 3 minutes off the advantage of that 5-man breakaway.
Yes, that's absolutely right, because the peloton is chasing this group of 19 and the rest are coming back as a matter of course. I think there's Tyler Farrar in the black with the E on his shoulders, tucked away to the left of our picture. 1 or 2 guys are in this breakaway rather regretting it now, because I don't think they've got the form to stay there. They're just sitting at the back of it. Somebody shot off to the left of our picture. Astana, they've got nobody up there of note, so they've got to put in a move by the look of it.
Well, moving off the front end there, the Astana rider is Andrei Grivko. He's a very good individual time trialist, but I'd have to say, Phil, this is not really a very good tactical move.
No, Grivko is a worker for the team these days. He hasn't, in fact, won a race since he won the national time trial title 2 years ago, but that doesn't mean he's a bad rider. He's a very strong team rider, and he's been told by someone to start chasing this group down.
Well, Alan Davis, the Australian rider, is taking part here for Team Astana. He'd be trying to see whether or not, in fact, the work that Grivko is doing, I said it wasn't a very good tactical move. He's almost bridged the gap, but that, Phil, indicates to me they've lost interest in that leading split there. They were all concerned probably about the presence of some of the big names of the sport, and they could be hindering their own team's tactics.
And they've gone back out onto a rather pleasant wide road here, which isn't good for the breakaway. And I think it's going to happen. They're going to bring it back, but what amount of energy have they used to bring this back? That was a pressure point for Leopard Trek. They were up for this one though, and there they are in the distance, so they're going to shut it down now. We're even not showing you the gap anymore. 3:14 it is to the leaders.
Well, the leaders are not too far away from the fourth climb of the day there, Caparice, and that's a kilometre long ride, a 5.5% average grade. And as you can see just in the distance there, we're coming into the very heart of the Flandrian mountains. We can't really call them mountains. Most of them are only about 110 metres high, but it is a part of the world that can be very difficult, especially on a bike, as this race zigzags across all of those hills from here right the way down to the finish line in Meerbeek. Now this looks like the big figure of Andre Greipel, with just getting onto his tail there, the Austrian rider Bernie Eisel, a very popular rider, Bernie Eisel. While behind, it looks as if the whole of that main field has started to regroup.
And Bernie, a good friend of Andre. They were on the same HTC team last year. They split up this year. Greipel now with Omega Pharma Lotto, had 2 wins already with his big sprint, but he would love a classic result now. I think all the sprinters who keep on winning races, they haven't got the big race on the honours list, and he's now looking for a classic victory.
Well, I have to say Bernie Eisel is a talented rider, but he's taken the chance here to try and move off the front end of the main field. The leading group is at 120 kilometres to go, so they're not too far away for the fourth climb of the day. And then we've got a series of climbs fairly close together. They go over the Kreisberg. That is not a cobble climb, it's a tarmac climb. Then over the Knokteberg, a very steep climb which sets the riders up for the Old Quaremont. And another accident at the back.
Oh, a little bit of a shunt here. That's Bart Dox, who's nearest camera.
And it was Jürgen Roelands was involved in that as well, the former, and that's him now. You can see the stripes on his shoulder indicate that he's a former Belgian national champion. It was right in the middle of the main field.
Just as they were straightening up, of all places, from that corner, just look at the traffic jam now. There must have been 30 cyclists stopped there. But this is so typical of Flanders and the narrow roads of this area, which I think Flanders was created for cycle racing. It is such an incredible area to ride a bike.
Well, you're mentioning that, Phil. Definitely the climbs that they've got around here are phenomenal for a professional bike race. But these small, tiny farm roads that zigzag across the Flanders really do set this up for being a great race. You have to ride near the front in this race. It's a battle every time you get to one of the climbs. 18 cobbled climbs in total, but there's an awful lot more cobbles in between which do the damage as well.
So the barren fields to the right, but nice and green. We've had a fair bit of rain in the region, but yesterday was an idyllic spring day with temperatures soaring up into the mid-60s. Today not quite so nice, but it's perfect for riding a bike in the Tour of Flanders. There's no question about that. Temperatures cooled down a little bit. It's slightly overcast. There was a rain forecast, but I just have that feeling it may not be coming because, if anything, the weather's brightening up.
Well, the clouds look very high in the sky here from the commentary position, right on the finish line in Meerbeek. And it's supposedly the final time that the Tour of Flanders will finish here in Meerbeek, because next year they're talking about moving just a couple of kilometres down the road to the town of Ninove.
Gaperni, this is Turgo on the front here for Europe Car, another new team on the block.
It's an average of 5.5% and 9% in the maximum, and it is a cobble climb that these riders are setting themselves up for. Jez Hunt there in the dark black jersey of Team Sky, looking very comfortable, former British professional champion. He's enjoying his day out in the Flanders.
Approaching the fourth climb of 18, and the biggies come thick and fast towards the last couple of hours of the race. Right now these boys have seen their lead crumble with that flurry of attacks. We might well see it go out again now they've caught those riders. It's tickling 2:58 just now. Turgot, Europe car on the front. It's still Rabobank, it's still Jangle. He's setting the pace. He's very strong today.
He wants to split this race to pieces, and he wants to see and whether or not he can pull back that breakaway. There's a little bit of discussion going on at Saxo Bank. They're saying, come on guys, calm it down. But there are so many riders are very keen to try and get off the front. They feel that because of the pressure of that chase just a few kilometres ago, there's the possibility of strangling free.
This has been a tough race. It really has today. 50 kilometres in that opening hour, and the peloton didn't split up. Then the breakaway of 5 got away. It went out to 6 minutes plus. There's been the counter-attacks. They really give me the impression that they are looking for the weak spot of Cancellara. They're always digging, investigating to see if they can get clear.
Number 43, Jürgen Roland, after that little bit of a catastrophe just round that corner, he's got himself onto the back end of the main field, and now I think it is the moment of truce, but only for a few kilometres, because these guys, they probably feel that they need some respite before the onslaught of the climbs ahead.
No shortage of men willing to take up the running here, that's for sure. Just looking at the head of the peloton there, the favourites are keeping their noses clear just now. I don't see any of them just sitting there near the front. Slipped away just a little bit.
Well, this is one of the small Belgian teams, Veranda's Willems Accent, which is looked after by Lucien Van Impe, the former winner of the Tour de France back in 1976, and a very dominant winner of the King of the Mountains classification during the era when he was racing against Eddy Merckx.
Well, they've got Stefan van Dijk in that breakaway just now, so I don't know what his teammates doing, trying to incite a riot at this point. There's a mass of riders in that peloton regrouping now. They've parted the ways to get around that central obstruction. Now the sharp left-hand turn. Look at the inside of these corners. If you're forced to take that route, then you run the risk of a flat tyre.
And you run the risk of slipping as well, because you might have noticed there was some overnight rain. It might not come down to the latter part of the afternoon here in the Tour of Flanders, but there are a lot of muddy sections once we get to the cobblestones, and you get a little bit of smearing of mud over the top of these cobbles, and it's like an ice rink.
You know, just looking at these pictures, it's so easy to take them for granted, but the Belgian television really do the best when it comes to photographing live cycling. The cameras are right in amongst it.
Just looking at the electric bottle on the left-hand side there, and you can see Mr. Herman Frison here. They call that the elastic bottle in professional cycling. It's one of those techniques which sometimes the race referees turn a blind eye to. The other rider in the car there, of course, was Mark Sargent. And on the front, and I'm surprised to see him participating in the Tour of Flanders, the champion of France, just over to the right-hand side in the red, white and blue, Thomas Voeckler, the winner of the final stage of Paris-Nice this year.
Hey, he's having a terrific season, is little Thomas, and he's already won 5 races this year. Now, this is not his style of racing, but he is a very gutsy bike rider. He wins on opportunistic moments, and he would never surprise if he were to win here. He's going to have his work cut out, and the French don't have a very good reputation. They've only won this race on 3 occasions, and the last time, by the way, was the famous one, Paul, Jackie Durand, back in 1992.
And what a way to win it, Phil, because he got away in the early morning breakaway and everyone just predicted that they would get caught, but that was discounting the strength of a man like Jackie Durand. He stayed off the front end of the main field, and he got France themselves a very good victory.
Don't think we keep record breakaway distances, but I think, if I remember rightly, it was over 200 kilometres he was in front.
It was almost the whole race. Nick Noyen's number 81 for Saxo Bank riding at the back. He's also got some pretty good form in his legs this season, Phil, because he's had himself a victory, and that was in the very difficult race called Dwars door België, or the race across Belgium.
Had his moments in the Belgian Classics. He was second in this race back in 2008. His best other finish was 7th the year before that. Nick was actually touted as saying 2 weeks ago that he was looking to target the Tour of Flanders, and why not? But he is a little bit handicapped, but he might well represent Saxo Bank well here.
Well, another rider just sitting in the second row there in the white jersey with the red, white and blue stripes around it. He's a British rider. I should give him his full title. He's actually from Wales. Geraint Thomas is a rider who I believe, Phil, could be a great star for Great Britain for the future, because at the moment he does a lot of work for the Team Sky as a lead-out man for some of the other riders, but he is, in his own right, a world champion from the track.
He is a world champion, and you know, for me, I think Geraint Thomas has got the pedigree to become Britain's greatest cyclist of the moment. And he's wisely taking on food there in the centre of the peloton as well. He's been a champion ever since he was under 16 years of age, when he started to medal, as you say, on the track. He was very fast over short distances on the track, and he's been a world junior points champion on the track. and has been a senior Madison champion as well. He's done it all. Now he wants to be a top Tour de France rider, and why not? He's finished the race already.
Number one, you might just have caught the sight in the middle there in the black jersey, the black shouldered jersey, which is white at the bottom part. That is Fabian Cancellara, and Phil, I have to say, he's probably riding in about 128th place currently.
This is Wouter Weland coming back here for Leopard Trek. He's like all these boys, getting their first experience of this new team, which is organised by the Schleck brothers, really. And Wouter Weland had 3 wins last year when he rode for Quick Step. So he left the Belgian side and joined the team from Luxembourg. But he's still very much a Belgian and on home roads today.
Well, Team Astana must have some kind of a plan here this afternoon, because they've launched 1 or 2 riders off the front. Now, this is again a rider who's being let clear off the front end of the main field as they start to get their way down to the very heart of the Flemish mountains.
Astana surprisingly vigilant at the moment, and they've got their likely man to do something if he can get to grips with it. That would be Alan Davis. I'm not too sure. He's been up near the finish of this race in the past, but hasn't had quite the punch for the line.
But he's the kind of rider, if you do take him down towards the finish, he could create the big surprise for Australia and get themselves a victory in this race.
Another crash. One of the Euskadi riders there just ran out of road on the right. Camera's just caught it. Maybe we can see it now. It'll be on the right of our picture if we can. Oh, you see what I was saying earlier? If you go on the inside, this is what happens. And that rider there is Alan Perez. He's one of the old timers now on the Euskadi team.
I think that will have given him a little bit of a scare, and that's an indication of just how dangerous these roads are going to be a little bit further on. This is the second Achtervolger, Phil, and that's in Flemish the second chaser, and this is André Grivko for the second time.
Absolutely, he's trying something. He's got a plan to get something going, and this time no reaction from the field. Look at the way they're filling up what is quite a wide road here just now. And the easiest team tactic of them all to slow down the chase is to put your team on the front and block, and there's nobody can get past you.
Well, that's easy to do on these Flemish roads because they're so narrow. You put the whole team across the front and you put the brakes on. Everybody, I think, now starting to get to that nervous part of the race as they realise very shortly somebody is going to unleash a terrible attempt to split the race field up on the older Quaremont, which is about 2 mountains away.
Here's the confirmation of the leaders for you. Jeremy Hunt and Roger Hammond of Great Britain there. Mitchell Docker, Stefan van Dijk, Sebastian Turgot are the 5 leaders. The determined face of the man from south of London, Roger Hammond on the front. What's happened here? The world champion with his jersey flailing, Thor Hushovd, and being given a helping hand here by Andreas Clear, also of Garmin Cervelo. Now, has he fallen?
Well, we're just having a look. He's got a slightly different colour bike to all the other riders on the Garmin Cervelo squad. His bike is it's coloured white, and it's got the world. I think he's just stopping, waiting for the team car to get up alongside him. You see, as a seasoned professional, he's not panicking at all. Getting his over jersey on, getting ready for the race to start.
And he's obviously tipped off Claire to wait for him. It's a back wheel change. He also took the chance to take off his top covering. He's getting ready for business, I think, Hushovd, and he's chosen that time because of the way the peloton has slowed down, and indeed the breakaway has gone over 3 minutes again.
Well, that was
Michael Rogers on the right there.
Yeah, also stopping there was Dan Lloyd, the English rider for Garmin Cervelo, because he too will be his job of work will be to pace Thor Hushovd back into the field. You notice though when that incident happened, Thor Hushovd did not panic at all. He really is a seasoned professional.
Yes, it obviously tipped off the boys. He was very, very proud indeed to have picked up that world championship, first elite professional world champion from Norway. Huge result for Thor Hushovd, and I think a big threat today because he's obviously riding extremely well. This is the breakaway, coming down to 113 kilometres. All seem to be working pretty well together here, looking pretty cool. Mitchell Docker there, I know his dad will be watching him back home in Australia.
Well, we're not too far away from going through the outskirts of Ronse, and we'll circumnavigate Ronse and head down to the climb of the Klausberg. Again, a climb of around about 1,000 metres, and there's a little bit of cobblestones just over the top of it for 500 metres or so. But then we really are getting into the gateway of what is going to be the most difficult part of this race. The last 80 kilometres contains 14 of the 18 climbs.
The grimace there now by Jeremy Hunt, who seems to be doing most of the work for the group here. maybe that's an instruction from Roger Hammond, because Hammond would have the strength to go alone if this break got any distance at all. He's had the results here in the Tour of Flanders, and indeed he was 4th in Paris-Roubaix last year. Might all well for next week, this bit of a training ride for him.
Another little bit of problem on the left-hand side, just having a quick look there. That in fact Wouter Weylands, he's just making sure that his quick release switches on the front of his wheels are nice and tight. I think obviously they weren't checked up before the start of the race. A lot of riders starting to show that nervous little signs as we get to the critical part of this race. Stein de Volder over on the left-hand side in the red, yellow and black jersey as champion of Belgium.
Yes, Stein de Volder is one of the top Belgian riders. He gets a little bit upset when people don't talk about him, because the colourful character is always Tom Bonen, but Stein de Volder himself has been a man for Flanders. He's twice finished the first place on both occasions, back-to-back years in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, but the team had a little bit of disagreement with him. He always wanted to prepare specifically for one race, and that was this race, the Ronde van Vlaanderen. But the team managers said to him, look, we actually have to race for the full season, so if you can't be performant for the full season, you'd better go somewhere else. And he did.
He did. Now, can he repeat? Just sat at the back here for the moment is Sebastian Chavanel, who's also got himself a new team this year with the Europe car squad.
But we're entering a quiet stage now, I think, Phil, before we start to turn around. The older Quaremont comes in at around about 86 kilometres to go. That was just a quick glimpse there also of the world champion Thor Hushovd being escorted up through the outside of the main field to try and place himself back up at the front. These are the hills around Ronse.
You know, they make it look so easy, these top pros, but once he's on the back of this peloton, he's got to quickly get through the traffic and get near the front, because your luck can change in the blink of an eyelid. Just take 2 riders touching wheels in the centre of this peloton and you finish up trying to recatch up with the leaders, and it's not easy on these roads. Momentarily we're on very good roads just now, but that won't be for very long.
No, we drop down, and in fact we're going round in a figure of 8 here, because we're dropping down into the town of Kleisberg to go and look for the Kreisberg, and we'll go over there and then we go over the Knokterberg. And once that has been done, in fact, if the riders were to take a right-hand turn here, they could go straight onto the old Quaremont, but we're going to go right the way round just to get in a few more hills.
Well, Grivko is sticking to his guns just now. He's trying to go away on his own. He's got a bridge, a 3-minute gap. It might be a tall order on his own, but he is opening the gap. They're not going to chase him down. They're going to let him just have a wander around the Flanders hillside, I think.
Just peeking in there, you can see the BMC rider with the red and black racing helmet, and that's a brand new racing helmet designed by the Giro company that weighs in at 190 grams. And we had a look at it this morning, and it really was quite impressive. Probably putting the riders in a situation where it doesn't even feel as if you're wearing a helmet.
Absolutely right. It is incredibly light. Looking out of our commentary box window, and unfortunately we can't show you the pictures, there must be about, I don't know, 300-400 school children who don't look to be older than 8 to 12 years of age, if that, all going under the banner with their arms raised as winners of the Tour of Flanders. It's an incredible sight, but you know, cycling in Belgium, this is their sport, and these kids down there, well, at least one of them, I'm sure, will be the next Tom Bonen.
Well, that's what Belgium is all about. It really is a massive sport in Belgium here, and everybody wants to fare well in the Tour of Flanders, because this is a great race and it's a great atmosphere. But everyone's building up for this atmosphere with races like Gone-Wevelgem, the Grand Prix E3, and they're all waiting for the big one. This is the creme de la creme as far as Belgium's concerned, the Flemish part of Belgium anyway, because the French speakers, they will look at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Would you like to just adjust that number you said before, Phil?
Well, there was 3 cars, 4 policemen, and now there's literally at least 1,000 rather older cyclists coming up the home straight. This has become a weekend festival in the last few years, the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Yesterday, 20,000 people were riding their bikes, all to check out the course, and many of them were American. We've met a lot of them today and last night, who had an incredibly lovely day to go around the Seglo. Everyone, without exception, said just how difficult the Ronde van Vlaanderen is, and because of the narrowness of the roads and the short, steep climbs with the cobblestones, because to many Americans, they've never seen cobblestones before.
Well, I spoke to one gentleman, Phil, just before the start this morning, a former 747 pilot, and he came across here from Germany to participate. For the 258 kilometres, it took him 10.5 hours, and he was still happy that he'd finished.
Well, I'll tell you, that's over 15 miles an hour average, and I'd be pleased with that. That's a very good performance. Nice glimpse of Fabian Cancellara. He wears number 1 because he won this race last year, and it really does mark you out as the man to watch. Defending champion, of course, always wears number 1 in the following year, but Cancellara looking cool. He was very nervous at the start today. He really did not want to speak to anyone, and that's very uncharacteristic of Fabian.
No, he's normally a very laid-back character, but it was exactly the same last year at the start of the Ronde van Vlaanderen. He was quiet, he was determined, and he was probably all locked up in his own little box, because he knows that later on in this race he's going to dig deep into the hurt locker.
There's no easy way to win the Tour of Flanders, that's for sure.
Well, there's a lot of discussions going on. Herman Frisson on the right-hand side there, Mark Sargent on the left-hand side. I'm not sure if this is... Belgian television are getting themselves access to some of the race radio's information. I'm not sure if we are. I can't hear anything coming into my ears.
We're hearing nothing. You might be lucky, but we can't hear anything. But certainly viewers on Belgian television, I'm sure, will be hearing something here. These are the dangers, you see, these trees which are actually separate. Look at that now. Wow, dear me. Separating the cycle paths from the motor cars on a normal day in Belgium. As I say, you have to ride on the right and not on the main road at all if you're on a bicycle. It's very safe demarcation, at least.
Well, everyone's getting nervous now, Phil, because they know that the next 3 climbs are serious climbs. The Kruisberg, followed by the Knokteberg and the Old Quaremont, which is why you see riders like that taking risks to go up through the outside using those cycle paths, because they want to be in the first 15 to 20 positions. I'm just looking through there, and I had noticed George Hincapie at the front end of the main field. Hincapie and Balan could make a very serious combination on the running towards this finish. Back in 2006, George Hincapie actually finished 3rd in the Tour of Flanders. The Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, 2 races that he still holds very close to his heart. In fact, he told me this morning, Phil, that he actually still felt very, very nervous on the morning of this race, which is quite amazing for a guy who's been professional going back to 1994. And if he does participate in the Tour de France this year, which I see no reason why he shouldn't, he will equal the number of participations of Joop Zoetemelk at 16 Tours de France.
Yeah, the only difference is that Joop finished every one and George hasn't, but it's an incredible record, and you know, he's announced he's going to race for 1 more year, so he could get the outright record of 17 next year.
That would be something quite special.
And he would deserve it. But you know, he's a man for these classics. He always has been over the years, has a tremendous result board here. Last year he was 4th in Gent-Wevelgem, which was last week, and 6th in the Tour of Flanders. He's had a 5th in this race, he's been 3rd, he's been 4th. He's been every position except 1st. So let's cheer George today.
Well, we go for him. I think he would dearly love to win next week, but if he had a chance of taking either of these classics, he would grab it with both hands.
I've just got a feeling that his enthusiasm has not waned at 1 iota, and this year he seems to be keener than ever. He must be to make the decision to go 1 more year next year.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a crash there as well. I don't know how that happened, but incredibly the peloton has dodged around. This is a BMC rider, and that is Burkhardt who's gone down.
Yeah, Markus Burkhardt, a very good rider from Germany. I don't think he went down too hard. He's back up very quickly. In the team car, by the way, today of Team BMC is, of course, Jim Okowitz, the godfather, I'd have to say, of American cycling, because Jim himself and his wife, former speed skaters, turned to cycling, and then he actually started the 7-Eleven team and brought it across to the European circuit.
Yes, Markus Burkhardt, the points winner in the Tour of Switzerland last year with 2 stage wins. There he is on the floor now, dumped unceremoniously in the Flanders countryside. But he's not hurt, that's the most important thing, and the riders all showing the skills to dodge round the fallen soldier there.
Well, the reason that happened, they actually were coming together as the 2 main fields had split apart, and somebody has left a very pleasant souvenir, unless it was one of those jerseys fell off the banner.
It did. the washing fell down off the line there. Looked like a Saxo Bank jersey. Well, of course, last year Cancellara rode for Saxo Bank, so perhaps it's an omen as he now rides for Leopard Trek.
Matty Wilson for Garmin Cervelo, just on the right-hand side with the blue helmet. He has a lot of work to do today to look after his three-pronged attack that the American team Garmin Cervelo have put together here, with Thor Hushovd being the most experienced. And Hushovd really seems to have fitted very well into this team. And in fact, talking to Jonathan Vaughters yesterday afternoon, I said, look, aren't you going to have problems having 3 team leaders in a race like the Tour of Flanders? He said, no, the more these riders seem to ride together, the best of mates they seem to become. So just looking, that's Andre Greipel. Andre Greipel, he was asked this morning before the start whether or not he'd be riding on his own account here this afternoon. He said, no, I would be silly to do that because we're all riding for one man, and that's the French-speaking Belgian Philippe Gilbert, who I reckon has got some very good form. He's hidden his form well. He had some early success this season, and over the last couple of races, he's hidden a little bit in the main field, probably to come out and pounce now.
Well, he's been third in this race for the last 2 years. He is a man of the moment in these one-day classics. He takes his chances when they come. History shows he's won 3 classic races. He won 4 Belgian semi-classic races, and I would put him down as a very big danger today. 2:32, so they're holding that breakaway now. It's come back nearly half a minute. I've noticed the Williams team, the small team, are trying to do the best to break up the rhythm of the boys at the front, because they've got one man in the breakaway, Stefan van Dijk. Well, was
so
somebody on the right of the
crowd?
road here?
Well, that was a spectator, and this rider here that we're looking at actually rode into him. That's David Malkan, and I think he just missed the corner and he went straight into a spectator.
Oh, and he's hurt himself, and I hope the spectator's okay. I just caught a glimpse of the spectator shooting to the right. We can see it again now as they take a right-hand bend. The rider's gone off on the right of the road there, and I'm not sure what happened to the spectator because there was no cyclist involved.
Very strange. Well, he went down there. He was actually in the straight line where he went down there, but he certainly went down extremely hard. And again, it was probably the side of the road there, Phil, because again there was that little Death Valley, which is so dangerous, because when you try and flick your bike up, you've actually got to lift your bike up over it. Otherwise, you find your front tyres scraping alongside it.
Danger at every point of the course today here in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. They call it La Ronde, which means the round, and that's exactly what it is here. A tour of the Flanders hillsides. Many of these roads see little traffic. These roads do, by the way, but many of the hills out in the countryside hardly see any traffic at any other time of the year. Dangerous moments if you get caught out on those cycle paths on the right, because the exit onto the road is not always easy. Tight right-hand bend.
Oh, it certainly is. There's lots of twists and turns now, but these riders know we're getting into the real important part of this race, and we're going to start to see a very repetitive nature of these climbs. All of the teams and all of the teammates will be riding at the front end to keep the pace high. They'll be looking over their shoulders occasionally, looking to see whether or not their team leader is there, whether or not he's in the right place. That's Geraint Thomas again, Phil, over on the right-hand side as we have a look at how this accident happened. And as you can see, it was the little gutter just at the side of the road. That rider got stuck in it and he just could not get out, and he went down extremely hard.
Yes, the rider's going past him. They were lucky not to clip his wheel and go with him, but that's the skill of the day.
I think somebody just got a 3-pointer there. One of these bottles went shooting into the air, and that lady spectator at the side of the road, she caught it.
Oh, well held. She can play for the English cricket team anytime she wants to.
Well, she'd probably do better off at the moment playing for the Indian cricket team.
Oh, they're the world champions now. What a great result for them in India. So the peloton, you can see the speed of the rise here. They're charging through the town here. We're heading towards 100 kilometres. So they've got 156 kilometres in their legs now, which is not quite 100 miles of racing. And now fatigue will start to step in, because, as any one of these cyclists will tell you, this race hasn't started yet.
Nope, it doesn't. And I always believe, and I always say this every year, I've been saying it for many, many years, the most strategic climb, and not necessarily the point where you win the Tour of Flanders, but I've seen riders lose it in the past, is of course the Olde Quaremont, very much like the Forest of Arenberg is to the Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah. Everybody guarding their positions. The strong helpers on the team riding at the front here. Willems themselves in the white jerseys, desperately trying to slow things down in favour of their man in the breakaway, Stefan van Dijk. You can hold the floodgates back, but you can only hold the gates back for so long before the reaction will come. They are waiting for the 3 climbs just ahead now.
No, they certainly are. This is Matty Wilson. They're getting themselves onto the Kreisberg, which if you live on the French side of the border is known as the Mont de l'Enclos. And there is Thor Hushovd in the second row there. You can see him just on the right-hand side with his World Championship bands on him. What a great victory that was for him in Australia in Geelong, because he came out of the pack with sheer defiance.
Well taken victory indeed, but I have to also say a great defence of his title by Cadel Evans. He wasn't quite able to keep the jersey for the second year, but we saw a lot of him in the World Championship. 2:14 the gap. Is that our Astana rider coming back, Grifko? Looks like it.
Well, it's
yes,
looks
it
like
is.
he's had himself a little bit of glory off the front end of the main field, and now all of a sudden Andrei Grifko back in the fold. There's a crash at the back again.
This is interesting, because this is Postuma who's gone down. Joost Postuma, the strong Dutchman on the new team. Well, if Leopard Trek do get the winner today with Cancellara, they're having to go about it the hard way.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can see a big move coming to the front here. This looks like Tom Bonin himself has decided to give a little bit of stick out. Oh, no, it's not. It's Kevin.
Kretskins, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kretskins. No, it looks like Tom. I'll give you that.
Just the way he was rolling his shoulders a few moments ago. This would not be the type of move for Tom Bonin to make.
Sometimes it's a nice little message to the boys to say, I'm feeling very strong today, but it is Wilfried Kretskins setting the pace on the same team as Tom Bonin. Then we've still got the Willems boys just behind, keeping an eye on things. Sky on the left of our picture,
and the damage being done at the back.
Yep. Yeah, life at the back. That's Alan Perez we saw go down the water in the water jump earlier.
And Tony Revard.
He's gone back, and Tony Revard, yeah.
There you can see the big flag. You can see in the background there is the Vlaamse the Flemish Lion. That used to be the nickname of the great Johan Museo, who won this race on 3 occasions. So they're right now at the top of the climb out of Ronse. And many years ago, this hosted the finish of the World Championships. And in fact, the man who went down was a Walloon rider, Claude Criquillon, as we mentioned earlier, was the only Walloon ever to win the Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Michael Delage looks as though he's reaching the end of his limit today. Just slipped off the back, and now they're having to queue up quite literally to get in here. Now somebody must have slipped a gear. It's brought everybody at the back to a standstill. Oh dear.
Well, that was a Postuma
can you
crash.
believe that? That's a replay of Postuma. Okay.
It's nice of them to put a graphic on the screen to let us know when we're seeing the replays.
Yeah.
But this again is a little bit further up the course, another accident there, as these riders are just battling to stay in contact.
This is why you must ride at the front if you're strong enough, at least the first 20 riders, and just concentrate and not allow anybody to come from the back to the front. You see how Hushovd had his wheel change and quickly went to the front of the peloton. That's where he sits at the moment, 6 or 7 men back. He's looking like a man who's looking for the win today. He'll see how far he can go once we get to the steep short climbs. The tail is towards the sting in the tail is towards the end, of course, the Muur de Grammont. You can never go off course in the Tour of Flanders either, can you, with the crowds, the way they plot the route for you.
No, it looks like a big crowd turning out. There's Thomas Vogler having a drink on the left-hand side, French national champion. A little bit of respite now as they've got themselves over this climb of the Kreisberg. Now they'll be heading down into just on the edge of the French-speaking part of the Flanders, the area just outside the Hainaut, and they will go towards the Mont de l'Enclos.
Sounds as though Saxo Bank have got themselves a problem at the moment. I think it's Klostergaard who's got a back wheel puncture. We might pick him up on the cameras. We can hear the race referee shouting for service.
Again, I think we've got over that climb. Everyone's starting to calm down. They're waiting for the next climbs to appear on the horizon, and it's starting to get to the little bit more serious nature of this race, and that would be at about 88 kilometers to go, and that's the start of the Old Quaremont.
It is amazing, you know, just how many cyclists are still in this group. This is Alexis Saramotins here, who is calling for assistance.
He's the national champion of Latvia. That's the jersey he's got on his shoulders there. They've got a very diverse team Coffee. This is a French team. In fact, it's a team from just over the border here, and they're based in the town of Roubaix.
Yes, and be very significant next week when we go to the Paris-Roubaix. And it looks as though his car's probably got a rough draw because he's nowhere there to go and get his help. So he's going to have to get that wheel changed quickly, if he can.
Again, it's the lesser teams who are deciding to try and hot up the pacemaking a little bit. Vacances Soleil and Team Skill on the front end of the field, really putting a little bit of stick into this acceleration. Vacances Soleil, I have to say, throughout the early part of this season, Phil, have been a very aggressive team. They've always been prepared to go out on the attack. They were a phenomenal team in the recent Paris-Nice, in fact getting themselves a bit of a surprise victory on the opening day.
Salamotis, who's now looking for his car, he switched teams over the winter. He was with HTC Columbia, but he lost his place with them and has gone over to Cofidis. But despite winning the national title and the Grand Prix Isberge, which isn't too far away either, it's north, isn't it?
It's just over the border, not too far away from Dunkirk. It's in between Lille and Dunkirk, and it's one of those very famous north of France races which always happens in the later part of the season.
Inside 100 kilometres to go and less than 2 minutes the gap, so it is coming down, as they would say, quite regularly. And really it's because of the infighting. It's not really a concerted chase to catch those 5 leaders. In fact, the opposite is true. They'd be quite happy if they dangle for a bit longer.
No, they're quite happy to leave them out there, because the main field knows that as they start to accelerate on their approach to the more critical climbs, the speed of the main field will just slowly start to wipe out that advantage. We're now looking around about 30 kilometres ago, Phil. The advantage of these 5 leaders, if we look at Roger Hammond here, was 6.5 minutes, and it's now inside of 2.
Yes, Hammond bringing him around the corner first off. This man is such a skillful cyclocross rider, but he's a man of the spring. There's no doubt about that. This is when he does his performances. On the podium in Paris-Roubaix.
He's one of the riders who was brought across to Garmin Cervelo by Thor Hushovd, who after the demise of the Cervelo test team and the bringing together with Garmin, who Thor Hushovd really wanted to have alongside him so much he appreciated the amount of work that Roger Hammond can do in races like this.
This is the Lotto Pharma team, or Pharma Lotto team to give it its proper name. And you see still no big reaction coming this way at the moment.
Sylvain Chavanel sitting in second position. He too could be a serious ally for Tom Boonen. A couple of years ago he rode extremely well in these races, and up until he joined Quickstep he never came across to ride the Tour of Flanders or Paris-Roubaix, but he came here to try and learn the trade.
Now, talking to Tom Boonen, we haven't seen anything of him yet, so he's keeping his nose clean and his powder dry, as they say. George Hincapie, you can't mistake George in the centre there with that red helmet on. That's the new Giro helmet launched today, and he's right there enjoying life. Now what's happening here? Life at the back, wheel change.
Well, Wilfred Peters on the right hand side there, the team manager, finished in the top 3 in Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago. He was a serious teammate to Johan Museeuw. They just had a mechanical, and we had a quick look in the car to see no panic on board at all.
No, Wilfred leaves it to the mechanic, all back in the fray. There's the chaos behind. You can see cars are already stopped in the background. Somebody else has a flat tyre back there. That's the one place I wouldn't want to be, in the back, following these riders. The way they corkscrew their way through the roads of Flanders with just a few inches between their shoulders, but they know where everybody is.
No, they certainly do. Just looking at the back end of the main field, again, looked to me as that was Getis Semougelis from Team HTC High Road. I would be interested to see, Phil, today the performance of Matty Goss, who won the first big one-day race of the year, Milano-San Remo, who is a rider who I think all of a sudden he's changed a little bit. He's become a little bit more mature, a little bit stronger, as he's starting to get himself more comfortable in the professional ranks.
Well, the HTC team, the magic is working yet again for this brilliant team, which is based in California. They've had a great opening. The winner of Milan-San Remo, the winner in Tony Martin of the Paris-Nice race. So far, they can't do too much wrong.
No, it's a solid squad as well. It's a squad of a lot of winners. But the most important thing and the nice thing about that team, HTC High Road, Phil, is that they will all ride together. And even Mark Cavendish, as much as he wants to win big races, if a teammate wins a race, he's just as happy as if it was himself.
Well, that's what makes a great team. Now, there's a skillful bunny hopper down there from AG2R. Safely done.
Now it's BMC in the red and black jerseys now taking control at the front end of the main field. Hincapie knows this race. He's been here so many times before, and he knows how to be at the front at the right time in a race like this.
BMC then. So the word's gone out. They've got likely winners on that team in Alessandro Balan and George Hincapie. So they put riders on the front. This is the breakaway. They've been away for a long time now. Sebastian Turgot is the French rider in the green. At the back of the race, Jeremy Hunt is setting the pace at the front. He's been there, done that for many, many years. A tremendously solid professional bike rider. Twice the British road race champion.
Yeah, Turgot riding for the in that new jersey, the green jersey of Europcar, a team which was founded just at the end of last season, and in fact a very close call for Thomas Voeckler. Part of the contractual agreement was that Thomas Voeckler had to be part of the squad, and he'd already signed a pre-contract with Team Cofidis, and he asked them to rip it up so that the French could have another professional team on the block.
Well, this is Van Keersbulk, who's calling for help there through his little radio.
But the big problem for him, Phil, is there's been another accident off the back, and they haven't yet let the team cars back into the group. So this is the wrong time to have a mechanical problem.
That was that long shot. We saw all the vehicles stopped up the road. So whatever has happened has put the peloton here totally unprotected by service.
Well, there was about 10 or 12 riders actually off the back of the group. Still, riders prepared to come to the front. There's Thomas Voeckler. He will be wondering whether or not he can put in a top performance here this afternoon, because he was very dominant just about 3 weeks ago in the Paris-Nice race in France, where he won himself 2 stages, the 4th stage and the 8th, and on the final stage he so much wanted to win it because the previous year he'd actually been beaten in the sprint by a rider who very rarely got in front of him.
Well, we are now racing to the next climb, and as you can see, they're very, very twitchy at the front, and this is a bad time to have a flat tyre now. We've got another rider got a flat tyre on the right of the road. We might get a picture of him changing his wheel, but this is not a good time to puncture. This peloton has suddenly shot up, and the gap has collapsed. 1 minute 22.
This is a small town of Russigny, and it's not far from the Mont de l'Enclos, and that's why these riders are getting that little bit more nervous now, Phil, because this next climb is a very steep climb. It's one of those horrible climbs that starts off with a mild gradient. As you get closer to the top, it goes up and up and up.
Well, Voeckler's read the move. There he is in his French champion's jersey of blue. The world champion is off to our right in his white rainbow jersey. They're right at the sharp end for the split. This could be one of the last times we see the peloton so big, because once we get on the climb of L'Enclos, then I think we're going to see the front end really stamp on those pedals. There it is. The Knokteberg is next, 13%. That is a very steep climb.
Yeah, the hill, in fact, is known as the Mont de l'Enclos. This small climb is the Knokteberg, and it is, in fact, 1.1 kilometers long, an average gradient of 8%, but at the top it's 13%.
Another 10 seconds off the breakaway, and we're not even on the steep part of the climb yet, as the peloton are packing strongly at the front. It's nice to see Skills Shimano have a little launch here. It looks as though it might be Tom Wheelers who's trying to break clear of the field.
Well, that's not going to be for too long, because we'll start to see the gradual acceleration, because once we've cleared the top of the Knokteberg, we're looking at about 14 kilometers, Phil, to the Old Quaremont. There's an incident at the back there. Somebody's had a mechanical, and Sepp Van Marke is wearing number 17. He's obviously one of the protected riders there, swapping a wheel out with a teammate.
Well, they've certainly had their fair share of bad luck so far today, Leopard Trek. But thankfully not to Fabian Cancellara, who's holding position. He's not too far away from the front. As I say, if you can see him, I can. He's got number 1 on his back.
But you can see the nervousness now. These riders now, they're getting into the part of the Tour of Flanders, which they all know. If you're a seasoned professional, you know you've been here many, many times in the past. You know how important this climb is. There's one young rider who's clipped off the front end of the main field. He's got about a 15-second advantage over the peloton, but I think that's just to get himself a little bit of TV time. And there is the breakaway. 5 riders. They're now on the same climb. By the time they get to the top of this climb, it will probably be not much more than a minute's separation.
And this is a hard climb, but road surface is good here. You can see how they've dropped their gears right down, because there's still a long way to go. 93 kilometers to race. Sebastian Turgot is setting the pace at the front here. Hammond is always willing to race, sits in second wheel. This is the peloton. The national champion of France left, and the white jersey of the world champion Hushoft on the right. Everybody now looking who is going to start the move. They're on the climb. They've won the battle to be first on it, and now they're quite content to ride it.
You've got to say that was another move here coming from Astana. I was just going to say...
It's not Grivko this time.
No, it's not. But I was going to say, what a coup, really, for Jonathan Waters of Garmin Cervelo, because he signed up Thor Hushoft before the end of the season.
Yes.
He didn't expect him to be the world champion.
Now, that's what you call foresight, and he should be a fortune teller. Because a lot of boys were kicking themselves after he won the world championship, yeah. This is life in the peloton here. All of those backs arched and working very, very hard. And really, they can't go any faster or slower because they're trapped in the prison of the peloton just now. And the boys at the front are the ones in control.
No, they are. They know this climb extremely well. And I think we'll see them probably get caught, this leading group of 5 riders, Phil. They will probably survive until we get to the Old Quaremont. By the time they get to the Old Quaremont, you want to see the speed that the main field is going to attack it.
Well, you can see the crowds are cheering and shouting into their ears on the climb, as they always do, as they continue gently up towards the summit of the climb. Minute 39 is now the gap. Sébastien Turgot enjoying the moment, the Frenchman. And if anything, it's gone slightly out here, because once they got onto the climb, they've actually slowed down again.
Well, they know how critical it is to ride near the front, and they know the steepness of this climb, and as long as you can get yourself into the first 2 or 3 lines, then you start to feel that little bit more comfortable. But there will be riders still struggling at the back. The amazing thing is, it looks so easy, and just as if on prediction.
Well, this is amazing. More help required at the back. That is John Dekenkolb here. He's the new boy, a new professional. They had a terrific World Championships with the under-23s, and he's breaking through big time already with HTC High Road, and clearly has a problem and wants an immediate solution.
Well, he's got a very good chance to get himself sorted out here nice and quickly, but once they go over the top of this, they plunge back down into the small town of Kreisberg again, turn right this time, right again, and then line themselves up for the Old Quaremont.
And another rider is there pushing off again, Rob Goris. We saw him on the podium at the start this morning. Now we're seeing him off the bike on the ramps here of the climb. Dekenkolb, by the way, he's already had 2 wins, and he's only 22 years of age for high road. He scored very quickly in the Tour of the Algarve, and not too far away from here. He won the opening stage of the Tour of West Flanders.
Well, an interesting thing about Rob Goris, you just saw him there, number 204, sitting at the back there. He was, before he became a professional cyclist, he was actually a very good ice hockey player and played to international levels.
Now, Farmer Lotto, the team in the red, riding all for one man, Philippe Gilbert. They've got 3 teammates at the front prepared to set the pace. Garmin Cervelo have not made any mistakes today at all at the moment. They've got a man in the break, they've got their men on the front, and they've still got their top players nicely around them, Hausler and Hushoft and Farah.
Yep, it's going to be very interesting tactically for Team Garmin Cervelo once they get to the end of this race, Phil, because I do have to say again, that was at the front.
That's a Garmin, that's a Scott. No, it's a Garmin boy that's gone down there.
Well, it's hard to spot because they're almost exactly the same coloured jerseys, and again, he was going round that corner just a little bit too fast, lost his front wheel and straight into the grass.
And how lucky are the peloton are really amazing. Even the Europe car rider went round him in an impossible situation. And Martin Mortensen here, Leopard Trek, is the rider at the back. And so we're looking here at the breakaway now. Still, though, the head of the peloton rather reorganising themselves. You never know when the man in front of you is going to collapse.
Well, this is the very famous Ronde van Vlaanderenstraat, or the street of the Tour of Flanders. Just over the top, they're going to take a left-hand turn, drop down into the town of Kreisberg, and if they could just look over to the other side of the road there, Phil, that in fact is the top of the Old Quaremont.
Well, we'll be there shortly. I think that was Dan Lloyd who went down there from the Garmin Cervelo team. He's the big workhorse. He'd be the man most likely to be at the front at this stage of the race. The British rider on the squad. It seems okay, but it was a nasty shock. He did that once before, you know, when he almost won a stage in the Tour of Ireland. He was well clear, and in an exact situation on a bend, he just lost control of his bike, but that was proved to be a diesel slick on the road.
That was very unfortunate. I think that was in the stage around Cork, and he was riding exceptionally well. You can see now we're dropping down. We're looking at speeds here of 85 to 90 kilometers an hour as we drop down into the small town of Kreisberg, and I have to say, that's a fairly new development on the right-hand side, which wasn't there last year.
And yes, and the spectators you see running to the right are heading over to the top of the next climb, which is on the back of our picture right now. Anyway, the boys at the front, you just take a look at the faces and see how hard they have to work now to hold their positions in the peloton. This is not where you can win the race, but you certainly lose it if you lose position right now.
Well, everyone's getting nervous now. Everybody knows that there's Cancellara, just noticing him. Bjarne Riis sitting in front of the TV.
Face of Bjarne Riis.
Yep, and he's trying to
He's watching television. He is watching
He
television.
is watching television. All of the team managers actually have televisions in the car. They've got a multi-directional antenna on top there.
Look at that.
Well, they're splitting on the descent here after the top of the Konokterberg.
That is a very, very tough finish now for the riders. They try to reposition themselves here. That's a nice little peloton about to regroup at the front, but as I said earlier, we may have seen the last of the big peloton. A lot of riders left behind now at the moment. A minute 36 the gap as the togetherness of the leaders of the peloton.
Well, you notice just at the top of the Konokterberg, that gap, Phil, went up to around about a minute and 50 seconds. And now as we start to drop down into the town of Kreisberg, it's really tumbling fast.
The brake is under control, but it's an interesting diversion and nothing more than that just at the moment here. This is Canovalovas at the back from the Movistar team. Not the place to be for this incredibly fast corner. They've all taken tight on the inside. Well, and hopefully as they line out, they're all okay.
Well, one of the guys who went round that corner there, Phil,
like Robbie again.
It is McEwen going to the front. It looks as if one of the riders went in between the building and the lamppost, taking all kind of risks to get to the front.
And Robbie McEwen on the front here now.
Well, McEwen, he said this morning that he was here really to try and help out the team, and they've got a very good rider who has got a very good chance of doing well, I'd have to say, because Sebastian Roeselare has shown off some fine form this last week. And there is a split because there are no team cars behind.
This has been a very, very high-speed race today, ever since the flag went down when we left Brugge, because they did 50 kilometres in the first hour. The champion of Belgium, Stijn de Volder, he must be coming back from a problem. His jersey fully unzipped because he's off the back of the pack here. We had no reports, but look at the speed he's rejoining.
Well, he saw the damage there. He was caught out in a little split just going over the top of the Konokterberg, which again is why the guys battled to be at the front, and they're talking about a crash once again at the back of the main field.
Well, there's a Lampre rider involved in it, but that is all we know, because I would think the referees are now working overtime here to find out where the race is. This might be the situation of the crash. It'll be the rider in Mauve if it is the situation.
It's a BMC rider.
There he is on the right, plus a BMC rider.
Yeah. Gone down very hard indeed, and that's because of the battle of the Old Quaremont. Everybody being very nervous now, riding to the front end, making sure that they're in the first 15-20 places when they go to the Old Quaremont, because it's not actually the climb, Phil, of the Old Quaremont which is the most difficult. It's steep at the bottom, but it's there's a false flat over the top which is cobbled and usually battered by crosswinds. There's Hincapie in about 5th position in the red.
So we're looking at the head of the peloton now. There's 87 kilometres to go. There is a breakaway of 5. The gap down to a minute 23. It was up to 6.5. And the breakaway well under control here, because there's a huge infight going on, Paul, between the heads of this race. And we're seeing all of the big teams suffer casualties. BMC's lost riders on the ground. Leopard Trek has seen riders go down. This is the breakaway being led at the moment by Sebastian Turgot. The other members, Stefan van Dijk, Mitchell Docker, the Australian on skill, Jeremy Hunt, the British rider on Sky, and Roger Hammond. There he is on the right for Garmin-Cervelo. And for me, Garmin-Cervelo have made all the right moves so far today.
Yes, the American squad, Garmin-Cervelo, have got a 3-pronged attack in this race. Thor Hushovda, Henrik Hausler, and of course Tyler Farrar. The leading group of 5 are on the steepest part of the Old Quaremont here, Phil. It's 11.5%, but this is a climb that's 2.2 kilometres long. At the front end of the main field now, everybody's been doing whatever they can to try and bring their leaders into an ideal position for this part of the race.
This is where the Tour of Flanders, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, really does begin. You've got to stay strong and stay at the front, and you've got to hope and pray you don't have a silly fall or a flat tyre. Turgot here, he's 26 years of age. In just a couple of days' time, he's had a win last year. He's only had 2 wins in his career, but he looks a strong man today.
He certainly knows how to get himself over a climb like this. This, of course, is the Eau de Quaremont, as they call it, as we look now at the front end of the main field. Everybody battling for position as they get themselves onto the cobblestones as well. And once you've got to this position, Phil, we're looking at 2.2 kilometres long, 1,500 metres of cobblestones, 11.6 is the maximum. It's around about 6% in average gradient. That's Matty Heyman for Team Sky in the black over on the right-hand side. A big battle for him to try and get Juan Antonio Fletcher to the front end of the main field.
And that's the aim.
But the other American team in this race, Phil, BMC, riding exceptionally well. They are today thinking about either George Hincapie or the former world champion and winner of this race, Alessandro Ballan.
Just looking at the pattern, the way it's been, and the high speed, we've seen the same teams trying desperately to put the men in the moves. BMC, Garmin Cervelo, and not so much Leopard Trek, but they haven't been far off the sharp end of the race. And if we're looking for who's going to win this, well, Leopard Trek might find that they'll be isolated with Cancellara, and the rest of the teams may have a few pieces of ammunition to use today. Minute 14 is the gap now. Matty Heyman is riding good form today, this season. He's come out very strong. Third in the Het Nieuwsblad, which was the opening classic here in Belgium.
Well, we really are. This is, once they've gone over the top there again, this looks a bit like Chavanel. He's got great form this year as well, the former French time trial champion. Through the small town square there, it's the town of Quaremont on the left and right hand side, and this is why you have to ride at the front.
This is just one slip of the gear, a chain off, any problem, you stop, and the people behind you stop as well, and that's the way it is. This is Kerkelier, Jens Kerkelier, I think it is. No, it wasn't. It was Bonner, Olivier Bonner.
Well, this is why you have to be. Look at the crowds here turning out for the older Quaremont. Everybody knows this is a famous climb. This is where the Tour of Flanders always starts to hot up. 86 kilometres to go to the finish, and look at that gap now. It's finally gone inside the 1 minute margin.
And Cardoso there. No, it wasn't Cardoso. It was a Euskaltel Scuderi rider, wasn't it? They do not like the area. That was Castroviejo, who likes climbing in Spain but doesn't like climbing in Flanders.
Well, this is Sylvain Chavanel now. This is a very good tactical move for Tom Bonen, because it's going to put a bit of pressure onto everybody else, because Sylvain Chavanel in his own right in the last couple of years has ridden exceptionally well in the Tour of Flanders, and while everybody might have been watching Tom Bonen, they dare not let Sylvain Chavanel get too much of an advantage.
Well, this race has got a real electric passion about it today, and the crowds are as big as I've ever seen them here in the Tour of Flanders. They were expecting 600,000. They've certainly got that today, because everywhere the race has gone, the crowds are 10 deep. Now, a little bit of a move, a little bit of encouragement. No, and again, you see, Paul, it is BMC. I'm very impressed with the riding of little Frenchman Thomas Voigtler, about 5 men down. He's always at the front.
Yeah, but watch this. This is Big Tomica in second position. He had a quick chat there with his teammate Gert Stegemans over on the right-hand side, and Tom Bonen knows how important it is to be at the front on the old Quaremont. He's got the power for this part of the course, because he knows what's on the horizon, Phil. Once they drop off this, they go down into the valley, and very quickly they're on the scary climb of the Koppenberg.
The first real test, and it's Matthew Heyman, the rider who is tapping out the rhythm on the front for Team Sky, the British team, who could do with a big result right now as they continue to come up the climb. We've got a little split up, and now this is back in the Team Saxo Bank.
Well, I'm trying to figure if I can just listen in and just explain. In fact, what he's doing at the moment, Phil, he's just actually explaining after the Quaremont what the next climb are coming in, and his advice was exactly what I've just said. Next on the menu today is the Koppenberg.
Yeah, I think if I was a professional, I'd know what's coming next, Paul. I don't need a radio to tell me that, but that's the way they're doing it. Shout at the riders, keep them agitated. Well, they've gone over the top of that climb, but there's plenty of more still to come, and Matty Heyman is the man who's controlling the race here at the front. Well, you see the hard-working shoulder of these boys. Geraint Thomas of Team Sky comes through. Team Sky have got a plan here. It's got to be built around Juan Antonio Fletcher, Paul. I haven't seen him, but he must be there.
Well, I'm looking at the British national champion on the front for Team Sky. He really is a talented athlete. This, in fact, now is Heinrich Hausler coming to the front. So maybe he's decided to turn around and look after some of the interest for Thor Hushovd.
Just look at the speed of these riders now as they continue towards their next climb. It's still 84 kilometers to go. It is still a big peloton, but the boys at the back are suffering now. Look at the length of the line. They're hanging on here by a piece of string, and they won't be there much longer.
No, they won't, because look at the gaps that are appearing at the back end of the main field. And now On average, every 10 to 15 kilometres, there will be a climber. Jeremy Hunter's slipped back to the main field. We're left now with just a 3-man breakaway. This is the valley I was explaining to you before. You drop off the top of the older Quaremont and you go straight down into the valley. Then up the other side, it's the Koppenberg.
These are the leaders, 61 seconds of the gap. Let's nip into the car here of Wilfred Peters. Well, I don't know what he was saying, but you may have heard him. I couldn't hear him. 56 seconds of the gap. We're inside a minute now.
He was just having a quick word to his riders and said, no, we don't need to do anything just for the moment. What we want to do is just hold back a fraction and see what the reaction is of the other teams. And I think what he has to do, he has to keep Bonen calm before we get to the latter part of this race, because in the past Bonen has been such a pre-race favourite that he's got very nervous a long way from the finish, and maybe when he's got to the critical parts of the races he hasn't had enough energy left in those legs of his.
Well, on this race there are crucial moments. When you look back with hindsight, you can see exactly where the decisions were made, and you have to make sure, if you want to win, you've got to be part of those decisions. And I think we're reaching one of those decision times right now. This is a sorting of the strong men, and if a strong man's caught behind the field, he isn't going to be with the leaders when they crack.
No, certainly not. One or two riders splintering off the front. The start of the Koppenberg now for the leading riders.
And look at the gap, 49 seconds is all they've got, and this is an absolute brute. It was the subject of an April Fool this week when they said a Welshman had stolen all the cobblestones and they were going to have to reroute the race. Well, happily it wasn't so. We're looking at the riders now as they climb the Koppenberg here. Oh, they're on the Peterberg. No, it's this. I think that's the wrong caption, Paul. It should be the Koppenberg.
Actually, there's been a change this year, because what they've done is they've swapped in the Paterberg before the Koppenberg.
So the Paterberg it is as we go over the cobblestones here, and the gap is inside 40 seconds now, and it looks as though we're beginning to see the first signs of tiredness by Peter Sagan. Now that is a little bit of a surprise. Sagan was being talked about as a likely winner, and he's in trouble.
Well, now you can see Bonen on the right-hand side. Gilbert moving up through the middle. These are the big strong boys. Geraint Thomas over on the left there in the white jersey. There you can see Tyler Farrar, the American on the American team, Garmin Cervelo. Riders being picked up from the breakaway now. The pressure is on here on the Paterberg, and this is Gilbert, the French-speaking Belgium.
This is the time to hurt them, says Philippe Gilbert. He comes from the beautiful area, the other side of Brussels. His language is French. In his own country, this part of the world, they speak in Flemish. So from the Tour of Flanders to the Ronde van Vlaanderen for Gilbert, and he would love to win this more than you can imagine. His last 2 years he's finished third.
Well, I tell you one thing, to his credit, as a French-speaking Belgian, he is also extremely fluent in the Flemish language, and he's not too bad at English either.
Absolutely right, which is unusual. When I used to live in Belgium and race on a team, my teammates couldn't speak French, and in their own country they used sign language when they went to the Ardennes.
Well, you can see the damage that's now being caused. The riders, there is Thor Hushovd in the white jersey in the World Bands. Stuart O'Grady just behind him. I haven't seen Fabian Cancellara at all, but I would presume he'd be in the first 10 or 15 riders.
Well, if you think the stars of the world of professional cycling don't suffer like normal human beings, take a look at their faces right now. Hushovd was in pain on this climb, but suffering and holding position, which is what you have to do. This is where you hang on in there and try and repair any damage over the top.
Well, if you get dropped off at this point, you'll start to have a little blow to the morale, because you'll be trying to figure out how are you going to get back to the main field, or the other part of the story is how will you get to the finish line for a cold shower, because the showers here normally are extremely cold.
There will be by the time the last markers come in, that's for sure. But as they go around here, the crowd have waited for hours to see this. Just look at the crowds in these remote parts of Belgium. It somehow is quite bizarre, but this is their event, and they are following it with a passion. If you talked in the bars last night in anywhere in Belgium, they would tell you what they expected, who they hoped would win, what the problems were on the roads. They know it all, believe me.
And everybody had an opinion. They all talked about Fabian Cancellara being the best man for this race and the man who had the Tour of Flanders to lose, and he knows that himself. The pressure has been on his shoulders since a year ago when he dominated this race with a brilliant solo victory. But they all, because we were in Belgium, of course, Phil, they all wanted Bonen or Philippe Gilbert to try and dethrone the flying man from Switzerland.
Now we've got this small breakaway, and it's only down to 3 riders. They're the survivors: Hammond, Docker and Turgot. We saw Jeremy Hunt caught there. Stefan van Dijk has also gone back, the Willems rider.
Well, in fact, it was Simon Clark, the rider who came out there for Astana. He's on the front in the turquoise jersey, joined by Sylvain Chavanel. Chavanel is a tough rider, and I think it's a good move to have Quick-Step launch a man like Chavanel off the front end of the main field, because that gives the big man, Tom Bonin, a little bit of a backseat, because he won't chase his own teammate.
No, he won't, and the other teams will have to, because Chavanel is a very, very accomplished bike rider, and very, very possible he could do well here. So they can't ignore this one. This is a move by Chavanel. Simon Clark, another Aussie, has read it well too. Good chance for him to try and get up to the leaders. Only 3 of them left up front.
Hincapie there, covered by Geraint Thomas, the British national champion. He felt a little lull in the organisation at the front and thought he would whip it up a bit, but also very attentive on the left-hand side. Blue helmet, that is Sylvain Terrat.
Well, this is an interesting. They know they've got the gap here, so they're going to do the best to work to hold it. Look over the backs of these riders now. The cars are in the shot as well. They're not going to stay out much longer in front here. The pace being set here by Mitchell Docker has been superb in this longer breakaway. I don't know what's wrong with Turgot there, shouting at him because he's doing pretty well.
Well, he wants to whip it up because he knows there are 3.5 kilometres to go to the new climb of the Koppenberg, which, as you said, it is still there, despite the April Fool's announcement.
And that's what he's saying. He said, let's get over the top of the hill before we get caught, because the Koppenberg, it really is a walking climb if the legs collapse. So he needs to get the breakaway over the top of the hill. Then there's a chance they can move into the advanced party coming up.
Well, I tell you what, that big acceleration at the front end of the main field has split the peloton. In fact, where has the peloton gone?
Well, the peloton has slowed down. The peloton just missed the boat. We've sailed out of harbour because this group isn't going to see that breakaway again.
Well, that was because of the pain that was dished out on that previous climb there, the climb of the Paterberg, by Philippe Gilbert, and it has split this race just exactly the way they wanted it to.
21 seconds. They're no longer catching those 3 leaders for the moment. Clark and Chavanel are somewhere in between as far as we know. We're going to start running out of cameras for a minute right now. Plenty of people here willing to keep the pace up, which indicates Saxo Bank at the front now. They've got their fancied riders in the breakaway, otherwise they wouldn't be working. This is the first big decision, I feel.
No, it certainly is. Everybody wants to get to the Koppenberg. It's a climber, whether or not you're a professional bike rider or not, that really throws fear into your heart. Chavanel has just about got across to the Kop van de Weegstraat. Well, I'll translate that into English for you, at the front end of the race. We are in the Flanders. They do have their own language, and they're very proud of it.
Absolutely, and they're proud of their bike riders. The Belgians have won this race 66 times. Only one has ever come outside of Flanders, and that was Claude Coquillon. So the Flems, as they call them, the Flemish people, have won this event 65 times out of a possible 94.
We have to go back, Phil, to 1986, I think, to the victory of Claude Coquillon for the French-speaking riders, which is why. And I had noticed this morning, despite the fact that we're right in the very heart of the Flanders, Philippe Gilbert was an extremely popular bike rider, even though he was a French-speaking rider.
Absolutely. Now, there was, in the heyday, in the Belgian Flemish-speaking heyday, they won this race for 25 years non-stop. Nobody got over the Belgian cyclist. But now they haven't got quite such a grip on the race, especially when you've got Fabien Cancellara, and I think he's in that chase group.
This is a lumpy part of the world. We always think about Belgium and Holland being completely flat, but every time we look to the left and right of this main field, you can see these hills that ripple around the heart of Flanders, and this range of hills is what we will zigzag over for the next hour or hour and a half of racing.
There's the gap as we pan down the road there. That does not look bridgeable anymore, not with the quality of riders in that chase group. So the first decision has come at 79 kilometres to go to the finish. That peloton has turned off the power. They're on freewheel towards the finish, I think.
Well, it's a long time since I've seen the race split up quite so dramatically as this before we get to the Koppenberg. In that second group, by the way, Phil, I had noticed Stijn de Volder.
I just caught a glimpse of him myself, and there he is right on the front, the champion of Belgium. Remember, he just came back from a problem, and the race has split ahead of him, and he's going to be absolutely fuming with himself there. And Robbie McEwen is also there now, slipped towards the back of that field.
Well, McEwen had different idea in his team tactics this afternoon. He was there really to look after one of the riders from Team Radio Shack, and that was Sebastian Roselaer.
And as far as we know, Rossler has made this first selection of the day. Now we've got 5 riders again, but they've been recharged by Simon Clark and Sylvain Chavanel, and we have lost Stefan van Dijk and Jeremy Hunt from up here. They're back in the pack.
Well, Chavanel has got a fine pair of legs on him here this afternoon, because he knows by riding off the front end of this group, he's putting pressure on everybody else in the race and assisting his own team. And in the past, I've always thought that Chavanel had got the ability to win a race like the Tour of Flanders.
Well, the quick step man has got himself, he's recovered. Last year he had a terrible crash in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which was only a couple of weeks ago to go this year, when he fractured his skull, but he did come back, and now he looks as though he's found his old legs again.
Well, he just put his hand down a little bit to say to Simon Clark, take it easy, this is the right hand bender, we're onto the Koppenberg.
So we're looking now on the slopes of the Koppenberg. That is the select group which split on the previous climb of the Peterberg, and it looks to be around about 25 riders. We still haven't got a full identity of them, but we're pretty certain that the men that matter have made the split. The Koppenberg, 600 metres and a gradient 11.6. Paul, this one hurts.
Well, 11.6 is the average, but when you get to the top, it tips out at 22% gradient, and this is the time that you want to be in a small breakaway, because if you're at the back end of the main field and somebody goes down in front of you, it's actually almost impossible to start riding in, and you have to run up it.
And it looks as though Turgot, and that's why he wanted to be up here, is just hanging on a little bit now in the centre of our picture. Mitchell Docker is feeling the pain of the day. The television that belies just how steep this climb is. Perhaps that doesn't. It really is steep, and as I say, if your legs go, it is a walking climb, this one. And look at the speed of the chase group now, coming together of the heads of state in the Tour of Flanders.
Well, I tell you what, the Belgians have said, Fabian Cancellara, if you want to win this bike race again, you're going to have to take it away from us, and that's why I've just seen Philippe Gilbert at the front end of this group, Thomas Vogler over on the right-hand side, also riding extremely well on the Koppenberg. In the middle there, the world champion in the white jersey, Thor Hushovd.
I saw Geraint Thomas, he's now gone to the back of this group, and look at the group behind. Surely it's not coming back as fast as that. It must be a split from this group. Hushovd goes through our picture there. All these riders, no, it's not George Hincapie who's gone through.
Balan, it was Alessandro Balan, former winner of this race. Look at the acceleration. You know, Philippe Gilbert has got the legs this afternoon. Tom Boonen there in their next position, followed by Juan Antonio Fletcher.
So I'm looking to see if number 1 flashes beneath our camera here. As Cancellara, I think he's just gone through under our camera. He's right up near the front of the event. As they continue now, this breakaway reforming here. Sebastian Langeveld is there for Rabobank as well. Gilbert has pulled them all the way up. There is Cancellara now. As he passes through, all is well just for the moment. He will respect Philippe Gilbert, who has ridden an absolute stormer up the Koppenberg.
Phil, I cannot believe at 75 kilometres to go, they're already throwing these punches at each other. There's the remnants of the early morning breakaway. Roger Hammond going backwards, but Philippe Gilbert has got great form this afternoon, chased down by Tom Boonen, Cancellara, Fletcher and Thor Hushovd too.
Well, I take my hat off to Roger Hammond. He's grit his teeth. He's come over the top now. He's got a chance to recover here. Again, the field is split, but I think there was a serious chase back by with that peloton, because they're still in sight of the leaders. They haven't caught them, and now, of course, this is when the elastic stretches. The leaders are over the top, the pressure goes back on.
It's probably when you ask yourself, oh, what am I doing here on a nice Sunday afternoon in the middle of Flanders? There is Stijn de Volder. He's trying to ride himself back into this race. He's gone over the top of the Koppenberg looking for about 35 seconds. That's going to be very difficult to pull back.
Well, I have to say, it is a nice Sunday afternoon now. It is very, very spring-like indeed. The rain clouds seem to have drifted away across the sea, as we see 74 kilometres to go now.
Well, in another 4 kilometres, Phil, they come up to another very difficult climb, the Steen Beekdries, which is around about 700 metres long. But to get there, they've got about 2,000 metres of cobblestones.
Well, let's see how they deal with those. The sun is out, the shadows are on the road, and all the favourites are out up front. We'll take a break.
Joel, can you just make a note of those points so we can take them out later?
So we're looking down on the chasing group here now. A select bunch of riders. Cancellara, Gilbert is in there. Balan is in there for BMC. And that was, I think, the plan. George Hincapie, I would think, is not in there, but I might be wrong, and I certainly hope I am.
Well, Balan showing some of the best form that he's had for a couple of years. He was world champion a couple of years ago, and he was seriously subjected to the world champions curse. He had an awful season following that, and only towards the end of that season did he really start to ride again as the great one-day classics rider that he is and can be. And I have a feeling this year, Phil, he's refound some of that form, which is why he's in that group with the heads of state.
Well, these are the barren fields of Flanders here, which is what they are if the weather is inclement, with the driving rain and often the ice and snow, as these classic races have been known to be held in at this time of the year. But not so today. It is spring here. These are the two riders who reach the leaders and look to be going ahead of them now, Simon Clark and Sylvain Chavanel.
Well, Chavanel doesn't care at all at the moment, because he knows that if they start to mess around and watch each other in the back, he can start to consolidate his advantage at this part of the race. He's got a good partner there with Simon Clark, but as I said, tactically it's extremely good for Team Quickstep, because it puts pressure on everybody else. And look how this race is split apart.
But this is what the Ronde is. This is what happens if they race so hard, and they've chosen today to race really hard, because they know deep down if they don't race hard, they will take Cancellara to another notable victory. So they're giving him all they can do, and everybody wants to race. It has reduced the field dramatically in this last 20 kilometres.
It certainly has. There's Thor Hushoff going through in the white jersey, the world champion from Geelong in Australia. And a very good end to the season. As we come back out onto the main road, 73 kilometres to go. Chavanel just looking across the fields of Flanders here, Phil, to see what sort of damage he has done.
Yes, and Simon Clark there, this is his first big break as a young professional. I saw him shaking the lactic acid in those legs as he came off that bend, but he's still up there. Field regrouping here now. It's going to be big again, because there's not a big gap between this group and that chasing peloton.
Well, you can see how much it's split up there, though. And again, Garmin Cervelo have got a lot of riders in this leading group to look after Thor Hushoff. That is Roger Hammondfield, and that's why he was in the breakaway early on. He now knows he's not got that much energy left in his race. He might not even finish the Tour of Flanders here this afternoon. But if he can put some power into the break to make sure these other groups don't come back, that will be his job done for the day.
I'll tell you what, I can hear the shouts coming from Australia right now for Clarkey in this breakaway. Another new name for us all to cheer on from this amazing country. Now, it's not going to last much longer. It's going to be a coming together of quite a few star riders. Simon Clark taking on the food here now as he passes through the feeding station. And Chavanel, a much more experienced rider, but Clark looks like he's riding like a veteran here.
Well, he might be Australian, but he's no stranger to the United States, because almost the whole of his career, Phil, he's raced in American teams. He rode for a long time for Team Navigators, which is one of the top teams in the United States for many, many years.
Well, he started out life as a junior world champion on the track. He comes from Selby in Victoria. I've never heard of Selby, but that's where he comes from. At least I suspect he still lives there. But he's one of the tough Victorian cyclists based out of Melbourne. So, and now we're hearing that there's a problem here. Peter Sagan, we saw dropping off. The referees are telling us that his bike is broken, and it sounds as though he's out of the race. Well, it couldn't have happened at a worse time. The cobblestones are not very choosy with who they pick on, and poor Peter Sagan, he was listed as a man who could be on the podium today. Instead, he'll be on the finishing line watching from the grandstand.
Well, I think Peter Sagan is a rider we can talk about for the next couple of years. He's still very young indeed. I think he's only just touching 21 years of age. We're coming on to this long section of cobblestones now, and in fact these two riders are starting to open up a very serious advantage. This is the Maria Borestraat, 2.2 kilometres long of cobblestones.
Another bone shaker for the riders here, just to remind them that they have a stepping stone up towards the next climb as they get steeper. Funnily enough, it looked as though that bridge was going to happen then and there. I know the camera foreshortened the gap, but all of a sudden it seems to have opened up again.
Well, Roger Hammond, the American team, Garmin Cervelo, is the man putting the hammer down on this section of cobblestones, because he wants to try and make sure that these groups don't come together, because he feels right now they've got the right men in the right place. But I think as we look down the road, it is coming together.
Well, we're looking here at Roger Hammond. Yes, he is the tough man of British cycling. Indeed, world cycling. The Garmin Cervelo boys played a good card, putting him in the breakaway. But now they're snapping him up. It just leaves two leaders in Simon Clark, Sylvain Chavanel. They're only just ahead now. So it looks as though we're having a reshake. And Peter Sagan has gone out of the race with a broken bicycle.
Well, that's pretty tough luck for Peter Sagan, but again, Phil, I think he's the kind of rider who will come back in a couple of years' time, just 21 years of age. He can learn from his experiences in events like this.
Well, the kilometres are flying off our television sets today, aren't they? 71 to go now as we get to the Steenberg-Dries climb. Short and sharp.
Yeah, the Covendo race ride for Chavanel and Simon Clark. That means the front end of the bike race. Chavanel is in fine form and he really does enjoy bike races like this.
Well, this is looking very much like it's not Matthew Goss, is it, who's coming up to the front. He's had a shave for a change. I'm not sure that's a good sign. The winner of Milan-San Remo here and making a move. This will distract the riders because they can't let this rider go too far out of the sights.
Well, I have a feeling everyone's decided, Phil, as the main field two now are on the Steenberg-Dries climb, that they're going to throw it at Fabian Cancellara this afternoon and try and isolate him down towards the end by throwing these attacks out off the front all of the time.
Well, they are doing what they have to do if they're going to beat Fabian Cancellara, Spartacus, and that's hit him throughout the race and not wait for the last 20k when he will be like two men out in the front. We haven't seen anything of him other than Cancellara is paying attention. He's marked all of the moves he felt might happen. For example, on the Koppenberg, he was right behind Philippe Gilbert, who really did turn the screw there.
Well, it's really starting to get tough, this race. There is Geraint Thomas once again thinking about Juan Antonio Fletcher, and I think I tend to agree with you, Phil. We are looking at a British rider who is facing stardom.
The quiet man from Wales, I'll tell you, he's a killer when he's in the saddle, and he is doing a lot of work today, and I hope he can put Fletcher in a winning position. Hill number 10 behind us.
Yeah, that's the Steenberg-Dries, and that will give the riders, again, sadly for them, there's no respite over the top of these climbs because it continues with cobblestones. Well, next climb on the menu, and they are coming thick and fast at the moment, will be climb number 11. That's the famous Tyenberg, almost as steep as the Koppenberg, with a maximum gradient of 16%.
As we snake our way, thank heavens there's no railway coming there. As we cross over the tracks, the long thin line now. The nervous riders here, they're beginning to shred the nerves now because now it's all eyes on the race for them. This is the crucial stage of the Tour of Flanders. One hill after another. If it's not a hill, you're changing direction. If it's not a change of direction, you're racing over cobblestones. This hour of racing is the most crucial.
Well, I have to say, from a few moments ago, Phil, seeing the race as split up as it was, I thought that was it. Now look at this. Tom Bonan has decided he's going to try and cover all these small moves.
And plenty others like Carsten Kroon here, I think it is at the front at the moment for BMC.
I'm not sure that is Carsten Kroon. I heard a little earlier, Phil, that he'd been involved in an accident.
Yeah.
But Bonan is seeing this advantage of moving into these little groups off the front end, and that's all because his own teammate Sylvain Chavanel has gone off the front, and Chavanel is leading by 18 seconds. And all of this is putting pressure on the man that we expect to win, Fabian Cancellara. Fletcher hasn't missed the move. He's number 4 sitting on the back.
And this now shuts down Team Sky because they won't chase now. This is the man they want to try and get away. He needs to be in a breakaway, of course, Fletcher. He'll never win if he's up against the big sprinters. The sharp left turn here now, that breakaway will react to this group of 4. It's a perfect place to launch the attack. And just how strong is Chavanel and Clark, because they're holding off all of the action just now.
Well, if Tom Bonan plays his cards right here and he's able to ride across the gap and make the junction with Sylvain Chavanel by the time they get to the Tyenberg, which is where we are now, then that's going to make a very strong duo.
So we are on the Tyenberg, another cobble brute here where the crowd have watched on television. Now they're on the barriers watching here. 69 kilometres to go. This is the reaction with Fletcher making his move, joined by BMC and Quick Step, and it looks like Rabobank, but no signs of Leopard Trek.
Well, I tell you what, Tom Bonan has seen this as an opportunity here this afternoon, but you can never discount the man on the front in the black jersey of Team Sky, Juan Antonio Fletcher. He's a fighter. Very rarely have Spanish riders come up to the northern part of Europe to enjoy these races, but he loves them.
Yeah, well, mine goes back to Miguel Poble back in the 50s, and then along came Juan Antonio Fletcher. This man loves racing in the Spring Classics of Flanders. He said he'd be happy with a podium place, but what he really means is he'd be happy with the win.
He wants the win there. You can just see the world champion there of the American Garmin Cervelo team coming across the gap, pulling it slowly all back together. 5 or 6 riders behind him. Fabian Cancellara being attentive. He hasn't put a foot wrong yet so far.
No, and watch out with the proximity of Thor Hushovd. He has not missed anything at all. He's the world champion there. He's in the white, right back up with the leaders, doing just enough to hold position and not too worried. Philippe Gilbert is up here as well. Cancellara is not too far away from the shadow of Gilbert. They've hit it hard and fast. There's Cancellara peeping into the left of our picture. He's the man in black on the rails just down there just now. Again, the split has come, but you know, they're not pushing this one home. They're going to ease up again.
Well, you can see how the race is unfolding. Every time we get to the climbs, it's splitting up a fraction. They do the damage on the climb, and then the other riders in the main field, they scramble back, they try and survive. And that's very much what the Ronde van Vlaanderen is all about. It's survival. How many times can you recover taking a hammering like this on the climbs?
Well, that's the art of winning the Tour of Flanders, I guess, if we knew the answer to that one. But look at the crowds here now, as once more it's Rabobank, who have had an incredibly good start to the year, their best ever as a team. Cancellara is locked into second wheel now, just to announce to everybody, hello, I'm here. I'm just trying, that is Hagen just behind him. And so Team Sky have got the rider right on Cancellara's wheel. Just looking down the line here now. Well, it looks to me as though we still have everything to race for here. There is no obvious favourite anymore, and the field are doing everything right. They're attacking Fabian Cancellara. Well, as you're looking now, the team is now under the pressure from a new team on the block and not on the race. One of the longest sponsorships in the sport right now, Rabobank. But they're having a wonderful start. It all began with victory by Cameron Meyer in Australia in the Tour Down Under, and it's continued all around the world since. Now, is it going to be their day today for Team Rabobank from just over the borders in Holland?
Well, everybody feels there's a chance here to sting away from the front end of the main field. They're looking for all of these moves, and this is turning out to be a very aggressive Ronde van Vlaanderen field in between the big mountains.
Little peep from the helicopter over the green fields here. The gap is 11 seconds. 2 riders in the lead, as they have been since they reached the breakaway. The breakaway has been wiped out now, but those two, Sylvain Chavanel and Simon Clark, are holding them off by just a scant 10 seconds.
Chance here to look over the shoulders of these riders, Phil. It gives you a good idea just how difficult it is, this race here. You're zigzagging, turning left and right. This looks like Sebastian Langevel from Team Rabobank. It didn't look to me at the start of the race if they had a very strong team, but it's the motivation of a race like the Tour of Flanders that can help an awful lot more. Of course, one of their big stars is Lars Boom, and he likes races like this, although normally they're only an hour long for him because his pedigree comes from cyclocross.
As indeed does Roger Hammond, and Lars Boom is developing as well into a great road racing cyclist. But Rabobank's having such a great start to the year that when you get into that groove, everything you try seems to work, and it is Sebastian Lang who's stepping on the gasworks up at the front at the moment. Let's see, I think we're going to pop inside the team car. There we are, Wilfred Peters in charge. And as I say, I try to hear what he says, but he was on about the Leopard squad there. It's not us but them, he said, so we'll see. We're waiting for somebody to take up the chase, I suspect.
Well, I think that's basically what is important there, because of the fact that Sebastian Chavanel has got himself into this breakaway group, Phil. It puts a lot of pressure onto Leopard to do the chasing, because Chavanel is a man who has a big ticket on his back because he's an extremely well-known bike rider. This is the Echthoven Plain, 200 meters long, and that's before they get to the next climb of the day, the climb of the Eichenberg.
So the tandem up front, the Australian-French tandem, has a gap of 12 seconds, and the pressure is on, I think, Leopard Trek right now, because They've certainly got Cancellara up here, but I think they're very thin on the ground with workers, because they've had nothing but trouble since they started. We've passed one or two of the riders on the floor and others with punctures, so they may be quite weak as a team just now, and that means that Cancellara will have to ride like two men if he's going to control this race in the last 30 kilometres.
Well, he's hoping to play a clever tactical game for the moment and make sure that he can use his teammates as much as possible, but many of his riders have had a lot of bad luck so far in this race with crashes and flat tyres, and it puts a lot of pressure onto the shoulders of Fabian Cancellara once we get into the final hour of racing.
Well, we've got one rider just out of our picture there, just going around that top bend. I don't know where he is, but he must be bridging the gap to the two leaders just now. This is the main part of the peloton, and our cameras can't get down there annoyingly at the moment because of the nature of the race. The race referees, knowing that the race is splintering, will not allow motorbikes in those gaps. So we're working on the helicopter here.
Well, I think we've got another moment of respite, and let's see how long these riders keep the flag of truce up there. Torhushoft over to the right-hand side, right in the middle in the black shoulders and the white jersey, number 1, and that, of course, Fabian Cancellara.
What we'd all like to see is the tall black and red jerseyed figure of George Hincapie in here, and I can't see him at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is in here because he was working very hard earlier. I think he's got his team leader for the day, and I think I'm right in guessing it's Balan they're going for as the likely winner for BMC today.
Well, we're now making the turn towards the Eichenberg, a long climb of 1.3 kilometres. Again, there's a little bit of cobbles at the bottom. Then once you get to the top, it's a long false flat, and that's where the damage ends up being done.
Well, this is a false flat at the moment. We are now looking at the Eichenberg here, maximum of 10%, situation up front unchanged. Clark and Chavanel are clear, and they're building at the moment by 28 seconds. This, I think, we'll start calling the Cancellara group now, because you've got about 25 riders, but they're coming back all of the time. As soon as they ease up, more riders rejoin. Thomas Vogler, fourth rider off to our left there, has had a great Tour of Flanders so far. These are the two leaders.
Well, Simon Clark is the man on the front for Team Astana here, and just behind him Sylvain Chavanel, and I think this is a tactical manoeuvring by Team Quickstep to put pressure on Leopard Trek and hopefully set something up for Tom Bonen a little later on.
Well, I tell you, this is a superb card now played by Quickstep here with Sylvain Chavanel. He could win this race. He's a quality bike rider, but it's swung all of the work now over to Cancellara and Leopard Trek. They have to do something about it.
Anyway, this is Chavanel, and he's getting on with the job at hand right now, because he knows that every minute that he's in front of this race, every kilometre that he's in front of this race, he's got a big chance to put the pressure on the shoulders of everybody else.
I think this is a great move by Chavanel, and just how strong was he with Simon Clark to get across and do the gap there, because that was a great piece of riding there by Chavanel. This is the back end of the race here as we're watching it now. The BMC rider we just saw was Manuel Quinziato, who was didn't get his contract renewed with Team Sky this year.
Now this is Lars Boom, the man we were talking about just a little earlier. He's got that explosive acceleration on these kind of climbs, and that comes from the sport of cyclocross, which is a winter sport where you ride across hills and you ride across fields, and then when it's too difficult, you throw the bike on your shoulder and you ride a bit more.
Is this Lance Armstrong coming up the hill? Because look at his cadence here. This Chavanel is just ticking those pedals over at around about 120 revs as he speeds up the climb here. Bohm is trying to bridge that, but this is another pressure point. There's no doubt now. Vogler there at the head of the chase behind. This man is on one of his best ever seasons, I think.
Well, I'm amazed to see that Thomas Vogler is dishing out a little bit of pain to Tom Bonen, who's just sitting there comfortable as can be. Bonen is the ideal build for these kind of classics races, with the cobblestones and with the climbs. He's a big man, he sits very firmly on his machine, and he's just sitting there looking at what's happening in front of him, knowing that his teammate is riding for him to try and set something up. And don't be surprised to see Tom Bonen going for a long one this afternoon.
Well, he's going to make the others take him to the leaders while he's got Chavanel, his teammate, up front. Here comes Lars Bohm. Final kick, not into our camera, and he might bridge the gap here, and then we've got three riders up front. He'll be welcomed by those two. It's a huge effort here by Lars to join the gap, but as I said earlier, this is Rabobank's year just now.
The Tour of Flanders is a very complicated race, and we're not about to see 2 riders at the front, we're about to see 4, because somewhere across that gap I just noticed Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Then he was the rider we've seen alone all of the time, but our cameras weren't able to pinpoint him. Then somewhere along the road he got away from the boys, and Fletcher is joining the leaders along with Bohm at the same time. So this is 2 heavy pieces of armament coming up.
Well, they haven't made the junction just yet. We're 62 kilometres to go, and the main field will have to start to get themselves organised, because this is looking a little bit precarious and organised.
But this shows you just how hard this race has been when you're allowing some big names to slip away off the front. The riders behind are clearly now measuring their effort. They're getting tired, and well they should be. We're coming up to nearly 200 kilometres covered, 125 miles. As we're now looking at the peloton, very soon they are going to be chasing 4 men up front and 62 kilometres to go. Well, here we are now with Simon Clark willing to work here. Chavanel doing a brilliant job and thinking, I'm sure, of Bowen. Looks over his shoulder. Here comes terrific strength to the aid of the breakaway in the form of Fletcher and Lars Bohm.
Well, these 2 riders now with a 30-second advantage over the front end of the main field will start to be feeling rather happy they've got some reinforcements coming on board.
So the bridge comes at 38 miles left to go, 62 kilometres to go, and they go at a time that the gap is at 26 seconds to the peloton.
Well, they're all taking this rather seriously now. Bonin playing the right position for him, just sitting there in second, third position, allowing everybody else to do the pacemaking. Just spotted the British national champion in there. We're at the next section of cobblestones, and this is a very long section of cobblestones just outside the town of Volkerhem. This is the Holloweg, 1.5 kilometres long.
Does that mean Hollow Road?
Probably, but there's a hollow feeling for many of these bike riders this afternoon.
Well, they're dodging the cobblestones here, but remember now that without Rabobank chasing, without Team Sky and without Team Quickstep, the 3 big teams have turned off in that group behind who carry favourites to win. And so it's advantage them now, and again disadvantage to Leopard Trek.
Well, that's why Leopard Trek now are bringing themselves to the front end of this main field, and I have a feeling we're going to start to see the charge of the Light Brigade over this 1.5 kilometre stretch, because they realise don't give this man on the front too much advantage. In fact, Phil, I guessed it was Fletcher just because it was a Sky jersey, but in fact it's Bosenhagen who's come across.
Well, we never saw him go, and the answer is never assume because you recognise the jersey who is in the front. But Fletcher obviously was caught in that group, and Bosenhagen has played his card now.
But Tom Bonin just sitting there at the front end of the main field and is extremely comfortable, and he's just waiting to see how this race develops. And once again, they have done, Phil, what they wanted to do at the start of the race. These other big teams, they've put pressure onto Fabian Cancellara's Leopard Trek team.
Well, Team Sky were lucky to get hold of Edvald Bosenhagen, Big Ed as they call him, because he came from High Road, and now he's starting to really blossom. And the Leopard Trek boys know that everybody is against them today. The whole world of cycling is out to make Fabian Cancellara lose the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Now we'll see how good he really is.
Well, they're getting themselves on. This is a very well organised group. Lars Boom is the man on the front. Sylvain Chavanel is the powerhouse of this breakaway. Simon Clark, he's been around for a long time. In fact, he's 31 years of age now, but he's starting to peek into the big time. And Bosenhagen just on the right-hand side there, he certainly is another of those riders who is a talent for the future.
Well, he seemed to have been around forever, yet the man is only just 23 and a half years of age, so he's still very young. As he gets up in that breakaway, he's starting his second season with Team Sky. He's never performed in the Ronde van Vlaanderen before, but he's up there in that group right now. And a terrific strength to have there as well. Second overall this year in the Tour of Oman without winning a stage.
Well, I'm getting some information. I can't confirm it because we haven't actually had a chance to look at the helicopter shot, but I'm being told that there are 7 riders, Phil, from the American BMC team in the Cancellara group, so that is force in numbers.
Well, they must be all at the back right now because we're not seeing too much of them here. But if 7 riders are there, then one has to be George Hincapie.
Well, Hincapie is a man who loves this race. He said when he gets up in the morning, he feels nervous when he comes to a race like this, and of course he'll be even more nervous next week in the Queen of the Classics, the very famous Paris-Roubaix.
Well, there is some tremendous hard riding being done now. I think this might be Martin Mortensen here, who's really working hard on the front, the Danish member of the Leopard Trek team. His job is simple now: go until you drop, but close that gap of 17 seconds for Cancellara.
Well, another one of the big teams has also missed out of this four-man breakaway because not present is the American team Garmin-Cervelo, and they will be paying very close attention to the development of the gap because they've still got their three big men in that group behind the Cancellara group. They've still got Hushoff, Hausler and Tyler Farrar, and if Tyler Farrar comes to this finishing straight, Phil, he'll be a very hard man to beat.
Yes, because it's a hard man's finish, isn't it? It's a steady climb up to the line. It's a long straight of about 350 metres. You have to judge it very, very expertly. If you go too soon, you lose on the line. 16 seconds the gap. There's the chase. They're leaving it for the moment. Everybody is riding behind the Leopard Trek rider here, and I think it's Mortensen. And they're all waiting to see how it goes before they put men into the chase.
Well, he's doing an exceptionally good job because he's slowly pinning it back to the 10-second margin. He's digging himself into a grave here this afternoon. He probably won't get his body to the finishing line on his bike. He'll probably have to take a car over the last 30 or 40 kilometres, but that's not important to him. What's important to him is making sure he pulls back Chavanel, pulls back Boom, pulls back Bosenhagen, because he knows that at the end of the day, if they go to the final climbs, and Fabian Cancellara, there's all those that have been taken the wrong way there. Well, I think they misjudged that because of the motorbike was going around that corner.
Yeah, I think the bikes were too close there. They didn't see that sharp left-hander. We might get a better shot of it here. There's our cameraman who came from nowhere right up behind our camera. Well, they've got the line okay, but they were going too quick. They just couldn't get round, and that's put Mortensen to the back of the group now.
Well, that'll take the wind out of his sails a fraction.
Sharp bend, isn't it?
Well, it caught everybody unawares. You can see how they've gone off to the right-hand side. Thank goodness there was a driveway there, and that laid that young man there. So, no, Tour of Flanders this way.
No T today. Keep going. Full left.
Well, that was a bit of a dramatic
that's
moment.
taken the actual sting out of the chase. That's probably done the breakaway a favour. It's sitting at 8 seconds. It might reverse a little bit now. And there's Thomas Voigtler at the front saying, all right, guys, somebody tell me what happened there.
Well, over on the left-hand side, black, yellow and red, and there's the champion of Belgium. He has fought his way back into this bike race, Phil. When you're the champion of Belgium, and when you're a Flemish-speaking rider and you're riding the Ronde van Vlaanderen, you don't give up.
Well done, Stein de Volder, because he was trapped in that group I didn't think would rejoin, but they did rejoin up the Koppenberg. So somebody made a very determined effort, and they haven't let go again.
No, they certainly haven't. They've got to get themselves organised, and you're right, the gap has now started to creep up once again. It's up to the 13-second margin. And now we need to have an organised chase to try and pull them back in before we get to the next climb of the day, which again, very steep climb at the Molenberg.
Well, that'll be hill number 13. Unlucky for some, perhaps. There's the full strength of what is now the peloton. Probably, well, it's hard to estimate. 35 riders, I would think. Oh dear. Well, there's a little bit of a problem there for Danilo Weiss of BMC, because once you hit that grass, your bike virtually comes to a standstill.
Well, I also noticed riding at the back of the group, which is a bit of a surprise to me, was Nick Noyens, who is one of the pre-race favourites as well.
Still time to repair the damage. Stein de Volder riding, as he always does, a brilliant Ronde van Vlaanderen. Then he takes the rest of the year off.
Well, we're on the Kerk gate, the gate to the church, a 1.5 kilometre cobblestone section. If you want to ride the cobblestones, you want to ride this bike race, you need to be at the front.
Still one or two cool faces there, not looking as though they're too much under pressure. We're in the car here again, who's actually cheering on Sylvain there. He's saying, come on, Sylvain. That was Wilfred Peters, the director sportif of Quick Step. He's still got Sylvain Chavanel up front with Simon Clark. Fletcher and Larsbo.
Well, riding near the front, very prominent is Hede Stegermans, right behind Stegermans, who's the quick-step rider in the blue and white, just on the right-hand side of the Belgian champion, is in fact Philippe Gilbert. He too is riding a very attentive race. I wouldn't expect to see a move coming from a rider like Philippe Gilbert until we get to the slopes of the Mur de Grammont, but that's where everybody wants to make their move, especially Cancellara.
I can't see this whole peloton hitting the slopes of the Mur de Grammont, but you never know. Stranger things have happened here. Europe car are well represented, not least with the champion of France, Thomas Voeckler. You also have up here, I think, Johan Gen, who won a very windy stage in Port Elizabeth of the Cell-C Tour of South Africa. It really was tough. He must have been like sprinting into a brick wall down there. And so he's strong.
Just listening in very quickly there to Bjarne Riis. He was just explaining that very shortly he expected a move, a counter move to go over the top, and he said when it does, you'd better be with it.
Doesn't mince his words, Bjarne. He doesn't say many words, but when he does say them, he makes them count. These are the 4 leaders now, and they've worked so hard. They fully deserve to be in the escape group, but every one of these 4 had to work hard to be part of the front group. 22 seconds, it's stretching again. Very pliable, this elastic today, I must say. 55 kilometres to go to the finish.
And I think again we're getting to one of those points where there's a moment of truth. George Hincapie just spotted him, Phil, over on the left-hand side.
That's our man, Big George. Frédéric Guédon, once a winner of Paris-Roubaix.
And also a winner of Paris Tours. He doesn't win very many bike races, but the ones he's got on his pedigree are all big, famous events. And he knows how to ride, and I must admit, Phil, I actually thought he'd retired last year.
Well, I hope he's not listening to your commentary, Paul, because he's certainly riding very well at this stage of the race, 55 kilometres out. He's now seeing what can be done here. It's a test. He's on the Willems team. And enjoying himself with the crowd. He's not far off. He'll be 39 years of age in October this year, and he's coming into 95 was his first ever season, so he's 16th or 17th season as a pro. That's an awful long time.
And it's an awful long time to keep the motivation there, to take a battering in races like this, the Tour of Flanders and of course Paris-Roubaix. And these are the races that he loves, and that's really because it filters through from his own team manager, Marc Madiot, who's a 2-time winner of Paris-Roubaix for France.
So Guédon, which means handlebar in French, is now just holding on to those handlebars and dancing on the pedals as he tries to get away from the field. The leaders are 23 seconds ahead of the main field as we're popping into the car of Amigo Farmer Lotto. This is Marc Sejean. Did you hear what he said, Paul?
No, it's a great system, but I don't think it's the first time that, in fact, the Belgian television have tried to do this. We're supposed to be going into the team managers' cars to listen in to some of the team tactics which are being given out. But so far, it hasn't worked 100%.
When they know we're in there, they stop talking because they don't want us to know all about the tactics. Well, Guédon looks as though he's not going to get very far. We still have 4 leaders clear, and now we're down to just 54 kilometres to go and no decision yet. This is the capture of Guédon. It's an advance. No, these are the leaders, sorry. No, this is the capture of Guédon, yeah, as he's got caught there, picked up by some of the teammates of the boys up front. That's Luca Parolini. I saw him crashed earlier, but he seems to be okay now.
Yeah, I think he's a good rider too, and when it comes to these one-day classics, he's got a very good chance to get himself a podium position because he's a very fine sprinter. That was Matty Heyman, the Sky rider with the black jersey, getting himself into that small move, just getting off the front end of the main field, but they've not been given that much liberty, as we see the leading group of 4 are still hanging on to 22 seconds lead.
But just take a look how big this peloton still is at 54 kilometres to go. This is bringing even more importance to the remaining climbs today. So Guédon has been reached here.
Now we get on there. They will not get too much assistance from the Rabobank rider because he's got Lars Boom in the breakaway, but his job is just to make sure he stays in contact with this group just in case they manage to get across the gap. In fact, there's another few riders have split off the front end of the main field now too. So we're getting to another part of this race where it's starting to get a bit grippy.
Yes, and interestingly, they're not waiting now for the obstacles because that's where you're expected to attack. They're going on a stretch of cobblestones here. As you saw, it's 800 metres of cobblestones. And maybe chance to get a little gap on the Jangadai before we get up to the top of the next climb, the Molenberg.
Yeah, well, the Molenberg will have a few guys gasping for breath. You can see everybody now is throwing caution to the wind. I think what they're trying to do is just check and see how Leopard Trek are going to respond. But you know, Fabian Cancellara and his team have got a very good tactical brain behind them, and they will wait for the right moment for themselves to make the move.
Now, riders now working doubly hard, wants to get on the cobblestones. They're going to keep their eye on everybody here, but there is a gap being formed at the moment. Let's just pop into quick step.
Well, it seems to me as in fact Wilfred Peters is pretty happy with the tactics of his team at the moment, and that's because he's got Sylvain Chavanel in that leading group, and this must be the tactics I think today of the teams. You've got one super favourite before the start, and that was Fabian Cancellara, and everybody said it's Cancellara's race to lose, but it seems to me the reason this race has been so aggressive, Phil, is because of Cancellara's form. They know they've got to knock him against the rings, knock him against the ropes of the boxing ring a number of times before we get to the final few climbs of the day, if they want to have any chance of beating him.
Well, that's right, and these four boys are getting clear. That caption that was just put up by our director in Belgium was incorrect. Philippe Gilbert certainly isn't part of that chasing group of four. But the gap is important at 20 seconds, and four more riders heading up with a couple of passengers there with teammates up front, so it's not all plain sailing in that chase group of four. BMC would like to put a man in the lead right now, so they're working pretty hard there. I suspect it might be Michael Schad of BMC who's got himself into that chase. There they are, four riders, probably about halfway across the gap here.
And that's Matty Heyman in the black jersey of
Sky.
He
gets better and better every year, this man.
He certainly does. He too is one of those riders who hasn't won many races on the road throughout his professional career, but he was, in fact, 5 years ago, the Commonwealth Games road race champion, a title which I think he was extremely proud of.
He was indeed, and fully deserved it too, because he's normally a workhorse and not a winner. But there he is. He's now going out on the move. And it looks as though the Rabobank rider just behind there is Tom Lisa, who's got himself into the break as well.
Well, on the left-hand side, the Kop van der Week side, the front end of the race, is the four men we've been talking about who are the leaders. Sylvain Chavanel just slipping off the front. The four-man chase group is almost halfway across the gap, but then it's only a couple of metres back to the front end of the main field. Words of wisdom coming from Wilfred
Whatever
Peters.
they are. As he now tries, he's probably saying that you've got four riders coming up here, and it would be better to get 8 men rather than try to hold them off and go alone. These are the four. Bosenhagen has to be seen as a serious challenge now. Chavanel is a brilliant diversion as far as Tom Bonen is concerned, because he is a man who could win this race. Bonen will make everybody else take up the chase and watch and wait. It's a huge move by Quickstep, this.
Well, that was the very clever tactics that used to be adopted by Johan Museo on his way to taking 3 victories in this bike race, Phil, because he always waited until the very last moment. You never saw him hardly ever during the race. He was always hovering around, perfectly protected in the main field until he felt the right moment to come and throw the punches was at hand, and he did that sometimes way, way, way out from the finish. And one of his biggest victories was when he attacked on the Berendries at about 48 kilometres to go.
Well, they've clearly been rehearsing that for a year, perfectly in time as they're waiting for the arrival of the chase, and here they come. And they haven't increased the tempo in the flag waving at... Oh, yes, they have. Yes, we've all gone now for the peloton as they've gone by. That's the lead peloton, of course. I think the gaps are opening now to the dropped riders.
No, certainly I think we're starting to see a lot of pressure coming onto this race, and it's 10 seconds to the chasers, and there they are. And in fact, I think it's another 15 seconds back to the front end of the main field. But Sylvain Chavanel this afternoon, he's riding to put pressure onto this race, and there's still a lot more tactics to unfold.
Terrific bike rider, one of the few Frenchmen that settles down and rides well on a Belgian team, and he joined this team, and his form came with him when he joined this team. He's really enjoyed his period at Quickstep. Simon Clark riding the best race of his young professional career here, sitting at the front and giving it as good as he gets. Bosenhagen, young as he is a star already, and an even bigger star of the future. And Thomas Lisa, Tour de France rider, also a man who can handle himself in this company.
This is actually not looking too good, Phil, for the chasing group, because they got halfway across the gap and now they seem to have reached the limit of their acceleration, because they're actually starting to not gain any more time on that advantage, whereas the main field behind, they've shot off a fraction at 35 seconds.
Well, I think I should apologise.
Oh, there's a crash again.
Oh, that's an Astana rider who's gone.
And there you can see again, it's because of that side of the road. Maxim Iglinski is the Astana rider who went down, and again, it's coming off a smooth cobbled road and then all of a sudden hitting one of these cement roads.
Yes, and again, holding his wrist rather ugly. That, I hope he's okay. Kazakh rider. I was just about to say, Paul, I think I should apologise to Greg Van Avermaet. I didn't think it was possible for him to be in the chase group, so I plunged for Michael Sharp. But it is Greg Van Avermaet who's in the group. He is a sprinter. He got a huge cheer when he came to the start this morning, but he's very often a disappointing cyclist who does not deliver the goods. Well, today it looks as though he really is. So if he gets to the finish, he could well clean up in a sprint.
He rose to prominence a couple of years ago when out of the blue he came up with a victory in a stage of the Tour of Qatar when nobody really heard about him.
So as we look to the riders now, they're just starting the Molenberg now. 14.2% is the maximum section of the climb. That's steep. And we've got 4 riders up front, 4 riders who are chasing. Tom Lisa, Matt Heyman, Greg Van Avermaet and Frederic Guédon. And the peloton, well, really, you can throw a blanket over them all.
Well, the man we were looking at briefly there as the main field now turns left onto the Molenberg. Very steep climb, very narrow climb. And look at the crash at the bottom there.
Well,
they're all
him out.
queuing up to get round the corner. You've got to ride in the front. Stein de Volder slipping to the back of the group. It's again the British national champion, Geraint Thomas, trying to set something up for his own teammate, Juan Antonio Fletcher. Followed by the world champion there from Garmin-Cervelo, the American team, and the leader there is the world champion Thor Hushovd.
That's the skill of an indoor track cyclist like Geraint Thomas there. He controlled things, but his legs have just hit him now, and he's dropping back rapidly because Cancellara is now on the second wheel here and driving. He's control of everything. Hushovd has got his back wheel.
Well, Spartacus is the man on the right-hand side. A little while back they told me that he didn't like the nickname Spartacus. Well, if you get a chance to see him up close at any race start, he's actually got the name Spartacus written on the back of his jersey.
Oh dear me, Frederic Guédon comes sailing back from the chasing group of 4 now as Spartacus goes through on him. To remind everybody, he's very much in this race here. This is the back of that lead group. And again, a massive crowd here cheering them over the top of the Molenberg.
Well, the Belgians are expecting around about 600,000 people to watch this race this afternoon, and hardly a sweat on his brow for Fabian Cancellara. He's not worried at all about this bike racing. And how smooth was that move?
That made it look easy. There's the Giants of Flanders here. They've got the best view in the house as he comes to the back end of the peloton, comes over. Now, again, power turned off, all checking the damage done. Cancellara reminding everybody he's now at the front.
Well, just looking around, keeping an eye just to make sure they know who's here and who's not. But Sylvain Chavanel has leaped off the front of this group now, Phil, and he's on his own with a 31-second advantage. Now, in this day and age when everybody is concerned about money, I'll tell you one slight fact about Sylvain Chavanel. When he moved away from Team Cofidis and moved across to Team Quickstep, he took a pay cut because he wanted to be in a team where he knew he could learn and further his career. I think his salary's gone back up now, though.
I would expect so, a cost of inflation. But Chavanel now doing what he has to do, and that's move on. But look at it. We're inside 47 kilometres or 30 miles now to go to the finish. But lurking in deep in the Flanders hills are still the brutes of our climbs. The Muur de Grammont over the Bosberg towards the end. It is still a long way from done and dusted. So as the riders go off into the distance, Chavanel is setting the pace now on a race which continues to change. We'll take a break. The lonely view then of the splitting or the splintering lead group now. Guédon has come back from that chase group of 4, and it looks like others might have done as well, because we've now got 4 chased by 2, and I think Chavanel is back in that chase group of 4 now. 37 seconds the spread, that is all. Matty Heyman driving here at the front of this group. Greg Van Avermaet is just up behind him. The peloton are stopping for a chat and a free feed. Well, watch that gap go up then. Already it is accelerating. 42 seconds and climbing. the chase will have to come again, thick and fast.
Well, this could be the big tactical manoeuvre here by Team Quickstep, because everybody's looking at Tom Bonen, and in the meantime, the joker in the pack is turning out to be Sylvain Chavanel.
This is a most unusual Ronde van Vlaanderen, but very, very exciting, because the breakaways, once we caught the early morning breakaway, there's always been a breakaway, but it's never been far away.
Well, this time it looks to me as if they got to the Old Quaremont to wipe out the early morning breakaway, and now we've got a very interesting situation, because this man is a man who's got a very big engine, and he's quite capable of riding the final 46 kilometers on his own. And if you're looking at his body language, you're looking at the way he's pedaling, he's got an awful lot of energy left inside the powerhouse.
And let's not forget either, this man has been the time trial champion of Belgium on 3 occasions since 2005.
Well, I think you meant France, because he's on a Belgian team.
Good point. Thank you very much. You saved me. Yes, on time trial champion of France. And if you leave him alone, he'll get into his rhythm. 48 seconds, and it's going up now, and he'll feel at home with a flotilla of motorbikes all around him. This is a serious bid for victory by Sylvain Chavanel. He knows if all of the teams are watching the team move his captain, Tom Bonen, then it's up to him to win for Quickstep.
No, it certainly is, and all this does is it continues to put pressure on everybody else, including, of course, Team Leopard Trek, as we see Alessandro Ballan moving up to the front of the pack as well. He's now moving into a little bit of a defensive role. Well,
there has to be a counter-attack. France has not won the Ronde van Vlaanderen since 1992. Now, what's Wilfred saying now to Sylvain Chavanel?
He says he's extremely happy with the situation, and I think he's probably trying to calm down Tom Bonen. Bonen obviously wants to win this bike race, but what's more important when you're a top professional is for the victory to go inside the team, and that's at the moment the big advantage is for Team Quickstep.
Well, just taking a look at some of those faces here, these boys seem to be almost on the limit right now, and they may be getting rather concerned about the move of Sylvain Chavanel. 45 kilometers to go. That was about the distance when he won his last national time trial championship, so he knows he can go the distance. And I think again, Geraint Thomas in second wheel here. He slipped off the front as we climbed up the Molenberg, but this boy is a real tough Welshman. Oh, and a bit of problem here at the back of the race. This is Gilbert, isn't it?
It is Gilbert. He's not panicking at all. You see he's waiting for the mechanic to get that wheel in. It's a back wheel. It normally takes a little bit longer. That was about 18 seconds. That's Mark Sargent, a former Belgian national champion himself when he was racing, pushing him away. He's in the convoy of cars, Phil, so he shouldn't have too much of a problem to get back into the race, and a number of teammates will wait for him.
Well, it was a very good wheel change, I have to say. It was a shame our cameras didn't cut into the car. We had a microphone in there, don't forget. It would have been nice to hear the comments then, wouldn't it?
Certainly would. The gap now for Sylvain Chavanel is 55 seconds over the front end of the main field. I would start to think that one or two of the teams are going to have to try and re-evaluate their tactics.
There's bound to be something wrong with the saddle. There always is at this stage.
No, it's usually the back brake, and it's usually readjusted at around about 60 kilometres an hour. Excellent. Let's call it a professional foul.
Okay, well, he deserves everything he wins, Philippe Gilbert. So we're looking the other way right now. He'll join through the convoy. This is the peloton, and luckily for Gilbert, it looks as though the powerhouse has reduced for the moment. Now, who's going to launch an attack here? Because this man's not waiting for anybody. Look at the clock. He is nudging 1 minute now. As we look at the clock here, it's gone out to a minute now. The lone attack by Sylvain Chavanel as he heads towards Honghoek. We're on the cobblestones here. It's 2,000 meters, 2 kilometers of cobbles, and as you can see, it is not flat. But the former national time trial champion of France is nosing ahead of everybody, and he's doing it all by himself.
Well, I have to tell you one thing. When you look at the way Sylvain Chavanel is going, if I can use a bit of English slang, he's hossing it along here at the moment. He really is giving it everything. While at the back of the race, Philippe Gilbert has just had a rear wheel puncture. He's getting his way through the convoy of cars. He doesn't look like a man who's panicking at all.
No, you don't need this, believe me, but he's the man to handle it if he gets it, and he's coming back up to the peloton. He's still got to go through the referee's cars, and he's back on. So the return of Gilbert. The last 2 years he's finished third in the Tour of Flanders. He wants the win. Only one other rider from his area of Wallonie, which is the Ardennes region of of Belgium has ever won this race. All the other Belgian winners have come from the Vlaams area.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. A few moments ago, the two riders who were chasing Lars Boom and Edward Bosenhagen were almost onto the wheel of Sylvain Chavanel, but I think all of a sudden he's got a twin turbo going because it's whistling like mad.
And the world champions had to come and do some work now. Tor Hushoff for Garmin Cervelo has hit the front, realising that Leopard Trek are on the back foot and they can't just win with Cancellara. Not when they've got a man running away with the race for Belgium, even though he's a Frenchman. And the French have never won since 92 either. Hushoff trying to lift the pace, but heavily marked by the teammates of Chavanel.
Bang goes Tom Boonen.
Well,
He's seen this as an
counter
opportunity. He's got a teammate in the breakaway, but he sees this as being a chance.
Well, I'm not sure I would have done that, but Tom Boonen has done it, and he's picked up the one man he didn't want. So he do well to slow down right now. He's got Cancellara in his slipstream. Not a good move.
You have to get up very early in the morning if you want to catch out Fabian Cancellara. That was a nice move by Tom Boonen. He saw the setup coming from Tor Hushoff. He saw it as an opportunity. He does have a teammate in the breakaway right now, but they have opened up a gap.
And Felipe Pozzato is the man who's hooked up at the back here, another rider from Italy who rides exceptionally well on Belgian roads. Well, I've seen some silly moves, but that might go down as one of the silliest today, because Bonen's now started a reaction against his own teammate.
Well, this is the five-man group away that was caught in between no man's land, and all of a sudden they've gone straight by them, and I don't expect them to get any assistance at all.
Now Simon Clark there really struggling as the Express came through on the left-hand side of the road. Three huge names in the sport, and the reaction started by Tom Bonen here.
And now Fabian Cancellara himself has said, right, this is not a bad move. This is about the time when I don't have any mates left in the main field. I might as well try and ride across this gap. He won't get too much help from Tom Bonen, but now Fabian Cancellara has got to plough across a gap of 57 seconds.
8 riders trying to be dragged clear of the field, a mere 41 kilometres from the finish, but we've still got the climbs of the Muur de Grammont, the Bosberg to follow yet. If this results in a victory for Tom Bonen, for Fabian Cancellara, well, Chavanel can blame Bonen for starting it.
Well, Fabian Cancellara now has really put the cat amongst the pigeons. He's looked over his shoulder. Look at the power of this beast of a man, Phil, as Bonen is just grasping to get to that back wheel.
Well, he's got to hang on for his pride now, because he started something. He's got to finish here. He has lit the touch paper as far as Fabian Cancellara is concerned. He's hacking by through there on the other two rides. We're heading to the Leberg now. That's Tom Lisa on the left. We're on the Leberg itself. And Cancellara, well, he's obviously annoyed now, and he says, I'm off.
Well, he knows how to do that, and he really is an incredible bike rider. 950 metres is the Leberg, 4.2% the average gradient, but at its highest point, it's 13.8. And now all of a sudden, there's nobody with Cancellara.
Well, this is memories now of Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders of 1 year ago. Paris-Roubaix is to come next week, of course. But Cancellara, I wonder if he's carrying that little angel in his back pocket to show his daughter at the finish. I think he is, you know, it's just there.
More than likely, but I'll tell you one thing, Phil, he doesn't have an engine in his bike, as he was accused of last year, because it was X-rayed at the end of every stage of the Tour de France last year, and he was pretty impressive there.
Absolutely, and I don't think anybody of serious mind believed it either. But as we come up to the top of climb number 14, there are 4 more climbs to top before the long run into the finish here in the last 40 kilometres. Tom Bonen has started the reaction, which he could not finish, and is about to destroy his own teammate Chavanel.
Well, Chavanel now on his own. He's 28 seconds ahead of the second group. A little while ago, that was at the 1 minute mark, and Chavanel now getting into an organised ride. He probably has the information coming through to himself that he's about to get caught by the flying Swissman.
And the world time trial champion, let's not forget, about to bring back the former French national time trial champion. Cancellara has taken 35 seconds off the board already. Once this man gets out on his own, you'll need more than less than a little bit of weight here, I think, Sylvain, because there's a tornado brewing just off the port bow.
Yeah, well, these guys, they seem to have had the stuffing taken out of them here, Phil, because of the severity of that attack. There's the man who started it all at the back, but it was taken over by Cancellara. Well, the time spread is 22 seconds to Fabian Cancellara and 40 seconds to this group. and all of a sudden they seem to have lost their will to work at the front end of the main field because they've been whacked in the face by Fabian Cancellara.
At 40 kilometres from the finish, Tom Bonen laid the foundations for Cancellara to go clear, and Bonen now having to try and recover and repair. He's in the group which were the chasers, with Tom Lisa doing a lot of the work at the front of this group. Now I'd like to hear what Quickstep have got to say now.
Well, just looking at Wilfred Peters there, Phil, he doesn't look he doesn't look very happy, and he's just letting Chavanel know that the next group on the road is at 41 seconds.
Yes, but the man in between is coming at 27, and that's Fabian Cancellara. And he must be livid with that attack by Bonen. It was an absolutely silly move to take the big favourite away from the race and give him what he wanted, the freedom flight. Now we're looking at Chavanel here, holding on. It is becoming quite a pursuit. Cancellara at 26 seconds. Here he comes. That shape of a figure we've seen to carry to a record number of 4 World Championship time trial victories. Nobody else has done that. He's the Olympic champion. He's slicing off those corners, and he's making his way steadily towards the leaderboard.
Well, one man, Phil, who does seem to have been caught out in the crossfire, of course, is one of the pre-race favourites, Philippe Gilbert. He was not expecting a move by Tom Bonen, and he's locked in the main field, so I wonder what his team Omega Pharma Lotto, are going to do about this.
Well, they've got to do something big now. They've left with no choice. Gilbert was unlucky because it all happened as he rejoined the race after that flat tyre, and that was bad luck. You need a couple of minutes to recover. And that was a vicious counter-attack by Bonen, and easily followed by Cancellara, who simply finished it off. Now looking up the road there, we don't see Cancellara at all, neither are we likely to, about 15 seconds up.
Well, Cancellara showing some real bike handling skills as he went round those corners. You can almost see the difference in the speed as we look here at Sylvain Chavanel plodding along. The way Fabian Cancellara was coming up behind him, it really was quite amazing to see. And it'll be interesting to know whether or not, once we get to the next few climbs of the day, whether or not Chavanel has got the power in his legs to actually stay with Cancellara, because he will get caught.
Well, we've got the Muir, which is hill number 17. The 18th is the boss of the Bosberg. Who will that be as we get there? But we've got 2 other small climbs to come as well. As we look here, the concentration of the leader.
I think we have to work a little bit now, because when it's already 1 minute, we have to, in Brakel, Ten Bosse, 30 seconds, not more, otherwise it's finished.
Yes, the voice of Peter van Petergem. He should know. He's won this race a number of times. He's saying, I think we should work now. I think that it's already too late, if you ask my opinion.
Well, it is too late, because there's not very many men in this sport of professional cycling can pull this man back when he's on a mission, and he is on a mission. Look how he hugs the side of the road there. He's taking the shortest corners that is possible for this man, making sure he doesn't go too close to the edge, where there's usually a few number of small stones that can cause a flat tyre, but he's handling his bike perfectly. He's just edging away towards the front group there. The front leader, Sylvain Chavanel, he's down to 19 seconds. They're all asking for a little bit of help in this group. Bosenhagen says, no, mate, I'm too young. I'm only here to learn.
Well, if he tries to carry them away, I'm not sure whether he's got the legs left now. He's only 23 and a half years of age, in fact, Bosenhagen. But again, we've got Bjorn Lukemans, who rode tremendously in this race last year, a most underrated rider, but always comes good in his home classics in that group.
No, he is a great talented rider, and I think BMC Racing will be extremely happy to have Greg Van Avermaet in this break. They had said before the start of the day that he was one of the team leaders alongside Alessandro Ballan and George Hincapie. And a little while back, Phil, they had 7 out of 8 riders that started this race in the main peloton.
36 kilometres to go, 15 seconds is the gap. Cancellara is just settling into his rhythm here. He's not throwing all his energy to the wind to make the catch suddenly. He's happy to just ride up as and when it matters. He just wants to make sure the others don't get back on terms now, and he's nudging away. He's 20 seconds now ahead of the group behind. Here he comes.
Well, he is an unbelievable athlete. This man is not a bad athlete himself, Sylvain Chavanel, multinational champion in the individual time trial in France, but he's never been able to rival the time trial performances of Fabian Cancellara, who, as you said, 4 times champion of the world in that discipline of the sport. And I tell you what, he's looking for a second crack here at Tour of Flanders. Look at the way he's going around this corner. He's pushing the motorbikes. The motorbikes are getting in the way. The race referees will be shouting over race radio to clear the gap. Clear the gap in front of Fabian Cancellara, because in all honesty, Phil, going around some of these tight corners, he can go round them much faster than a big motorbike.
Oh, he is an absolute awesome rider when he gets free to ride with what he does best here. Boysenhagen just sitting off the back of this chase group of 6 riders. They are riding for 3rd position on the road with 35 kilometers to go. We're not getting a time check at the moment on the peloton. But remember, all this chase was started by Tom Bonen, the teammate of the man in the lead, and it has totally backfired.
Well, I think probably the best tactic now really for Sylvain Chavanel, Phil, would be to back off for the next 300 or 400 meters. Try and get a little bit more oxygen into the body, recuperate, eat a little bit, drink a little bit, and wait to see whether or not he can get himself into the slipstream of Fabian Cancellara.
Well, this is the chase group here. Tom Bonen there, a little bit handicapped now. I'm not sure what he's got left in those legs. Maybe he overrated his own ability after his recent victory. But in Gent-Wevelgem, which was all down to a sprint at the end of the day, I wasn't too sure he had the big form. He's gone round in 2nd position here.
Well, the guts has gone out of that chase there. They don't really have the heart in it because they saw how powerful Cancellara was when he went away on the slopes of the Lederberg. He's slowly but surely pulling himself up there to the man that is his prey this afternoon, and that's Sylvain Chavanel. Is now just down to 10 seconds.
He's into his rhythm now. He's into a time trial rhythm. He's just tapping it out as he wishes. He is making no huge superhuman effort to reach him. He'll do it as he can. I'm just wondering if we're going to hear from John Waters.
Tyler and Hausler have to wait riding. I think Toll with 1 guys of Lotto have to ride full.
That's Van Petegem there saying Heinrich Hausler must ride now and try and get some help from the Lotto squad. Everybody, desperate moments.
Well, that's probably the only way they can turn the tables. This is the Volkenberg, an average gradient of 8.1%, 12.8% at its maximum. It's only about 600 meters long, but it's probably just about long enough for Fabian Cancellara to come across the gap. And look at the crowd. The crowd here, Phil, although they want a Belgian to win, they know how to appreciate a great cycling athlete like Cancellara.
Well, this has turned out to be a superb ride for the Frenchman in Belgian team colours here, Chavanel. But his worst dream is about to be realised. Cancellara is stomping up the Volkenberg. This is the group that launched him into space, and here he comes now. Just look at his tempo. And Chavanel knows he is coming now. There's no point in trying to hold him off. He's going to have to do his best to hold him, and that in itself is a big task now.
That is a very big ask, but he's being sensible, Chavanel. He's swinging over to the right-hand side, just recuperating a bit, because he knows just as he gets caught, he's going to have to dig deep to try and get involved with Fabian Cancellara. He may well even try and participate in sharing the pacemaking at the front, but then the team orders might come and say, no, don't work with Cancellara because Tom Bonen is in the group behind.
Well, absolutely, and in fact that would have to be the tactic now, Paul. No more sharing of the pace. Sit in the slipstream, save 30% of your energy, and hope you can hold this man on the remaining 3 climbs to come.
Philippe Gilbert, Phil, has just come across the gap with the front end of the main field. He's the one now putting the pressure onto this bike race. As we said earlier, he was caught out a little while back because he was at the wrong end of the bike race with a flat tyre when the decision was being made. He's seen the move, and has he got the legs to come across this next gap of 38 seconds?
A daunting prospect. Look at the face now of Cancellara here. Still one of great determination, the Swiss man, as he keeps his tempo. It doesn't look as though they're going to get across. 38 seconds, 32 kilometers to go, but everybody has been totally committed to this race for over an hour now. And the irony is the teammate of Chavanel has put Cancellara in a situation to win.
Well, the big situation now is there's 2 big questions, Phil. Will Sylvain Chavanel actually work at all with Cancellara, and how are they going to pull this race back together? It's going to take a concerted effort of 2 or 3 teams working together if they want to pull back Cancellara.
Greg Van Avermaet flicks his arm there, says give me a hand. Thomas Volkler is here as well. He has ridden a terrific race. It's hurting now, just take a look at his face, but he's still at the front end of this race.
No, well, they don't give up. They've got it pegged on the left-hand side. The Kop van de Wegstrijd, the front end of the bike race. Cancellara and Chavanel on the right-hand side, the men on the defensive. They're all seeing the man that they feared would attack off the front of this bike race, and they're all now trying to figure out what is the next move.
Well, we're all assuming that Cancellara is the Cancellara of 1 year ago. He won the Classic E3 last year. He then won the Tour of Flanders. He then won Paris-Roubaix. He's already won the Classic E3 this year. Is he going to continue that trend with a victory today?
En als ze nu willen winnen, moeten ze meerijden. Allemaal, hè. Het is Chavanel nog alleen over met Cancellara.
Right, that word coming through there was everybody now has got to go to the front. We've got to give everything because all that's left in this bike race. And the reason he's giving a bit of information is because bike races like this are a bit confusing. There's only Chavanel in front with Cancellara. He's told all of the riders on Omega Pharma Lotto to go to the front and ride. They haven't yet responded, but they will.
They probably can't. I suspect that every rider in that group is fully extended right now, and there's not a lot left in the legs. And they've allowed Cancellara his head. He's now in the position he wants to be. He's got 31 kilometres to go. One question remains. Can Fabian Cancellara win? What's he indicating for here? Paul wants a drink? Another one? No, come on.
Yep, I think that's what he's looking for.
Nobody's got nothing for him. He's on his own.
Yeah, well,
we didn't know.
He was dry riding through there, and that was actually an unofficial feeding station. One or two of the helpers from other teams. And the problem is, with a 41-second advantage, he can't get his team car across this gap for the moment. So he is looking for a fresh drink. And the way this is happening now, Fletcher has seen this. Once Fletcher saw the main field start to slow down, he thought, this is a time for me to go.
Chased by Volker. Volker is riding like a man inspired. Volker has never ever had a top 10 finish in a classic race, and he's ridden like he certainly deserves that today.
No, that's absolutely right. But the only way, I'm telling you, the only way you can catch Fabian Cancellara is to organise a chase. Not try and jump across a gap, because nobody's got the speed of Cancellara on his own. What they need are a number of teams to do the pacemaking.
I think you need to organise a helicopter. I don't think there's a lot of chance on a bike, because Cancellara isn't even worried by the fact that Chavanel is sitting on his back wheel. When we get to the next climb, I suspect a serious acceleration by Cancellara will put him on his own.
No, that's the important thing. Cancellara now is not getting any help from Sylvain Chavanel. He's got his hand in the air. He's looking for a liquid. He's looking for a drink. Theoretically, that car behind, the blue car with Shimano written across it, should have spare drinks on board to help him out.
So we're looking here now at Cancellara driving on. He'll get his drink, and so too Chavanel will shadow him. As you can see now, he's working to orders. He can't help Cancellara, even though second place would be a terrific result for Chavanel. It's all about Tom Bonen, who's in the group behind. Tom Bonen, the man who launched his rival into the attack.
Well, Chavanel is just looking at the back wheel now of Fabian Cancellara, and he knows how hard this man can go on a climb. And despite the fact he's ridden a long way on his own to be caught by Fabian Cancellara, he's got to figure out in his mind right now, how can he stay with Cancellara on the slopes of the climb like the Mur de Grammont or even the Bosberg.
3 climbs are still to go. 54 seconds now, the gap.
Well, the idea is saying that he wants to see the other teams working, because he reckons that Tom Bonen can still come across on the Mur de Grammont. I'm not quite convinced about that one.
No, neither am I, but we'll see, because Tom now he's again handicapped, except he's put the most dangerous man up in the front with his teammate. And we'll have to see. And really, Geraint Thomas, if you were going to give an award for the man of the match, which we don't do in cycling, of course, he's the man I would give it to. He's ridden tremendously today for his team.
And for one man, Juan Antonio Fletcher, you've got a lot of riders there from BMC Racing from the United States, and they're thinking about Greg van Avermaet, who's got fine legs here this afternoon. And they've decided, the words obviously come from Jean Lalonde, come on guys, let's not give this race away. This is the Ronde van Vlaanderen. You can't just sit and wait for other riders to decide when they're going to chase. We'll do it.
There's got to be an extraordinary effort now, and I just don't feel the way they've raced today. They've been on the end of their speed all day. The first hour covered at 50 kilometers an hour, and ever since, breakaways dangling seconds in front as they've tried to reach them. This has been a really good bike race, befitting of the 95th edition of this incredible event.
Well, it's up to the minute mark. They may well be getting organised at the front end of the main field, but they're not having any damage.
Look at that.
That is impressive. There are 7 riders there from BMC Racing, and they've still got 3 very good chances of victory. One with Greg Van Avermaet. They've also got big George Hincapie in there as well, and of course Alessandro Ballan.
Well, the only man who isn't there is poor Carsten Kroon, and he has a good excuse. He crashed out. We left him on the roadside a while ago now. The rest are here and driving. This looks like Marcus Berghout who's pushing on at the front. Well, just look at this. They are doing their best to bring it back. Take a look at the clock. He's still going away. 1:02.
Well, if Philippe Gilbert wants to be the second French-speaking Belgian cyclist to win the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, he's going to have to bring his team right to the front at this instant, because otherwise, before we go too much further up the road, we're going to be looking at a 2-minute time gap.
27 kilometres to go. 3 climbs are still to come. Cancellara has never once looked at Chavanel and said, "Give me a hand," because he knows the situation. We are looking at 27 kilometres from the finish. The gap is 57 seconds. 10 Boss, the third from the finish. The gap has just shown some reverse now. So the 7-man chase by Team BMC is having an effect. Cancellara is being forced to do all of the pacemaking now. Chavanel is the passenger.
Well, Chavanel will do nothing at all because he's got Tom Bonen, his own teammate, in the group behind. They're on this very short climb, the 10 Boss. The next climb of the day, Phil, is the one that every bike rider fears, the Mur de Grammont. Now, they need to catch him before the Mur de Grammont, because if they don't, I don't think they'll see him ever again.
2 riders in the front. The gap has shown its first reversal for a couple of kilometres now. 57 seconds. There's the Leopard Trek team car. At last he gets his drink. He's been wanting it for a little while, as he now continues towards the climb. This is good roads, this one. The next one isn't. The next one is an absolute brute and very, very steep. Chavanel just sitting there now. I'm not too sure how he's going. We simply don't know. Take that anyway. Because Bonen is in a chase group. But how good is Bonen going now?
Well, it's not really just about Tom Bonen. You've got to think about the other men in that group behind. Philippe Gilbert, George Hincapie, they all still want a chance of winning the Ronde van Vlaanderen, but they're going to have to work. They're going to have to form alliances on the road if they think they can pull back this man Spartacus. And it's a one team, and I'm amazed. This is a great team. American team, BMC Racing. They're Swiss bicycles. There's Alessandro Ballan right in the middle there, and they want to do something special.
Well, one thing's for sure now, as George Hincapie comes up to the left of our picture again. Boy, how does that man relish these Belgian classics? He's had 15 years of enjoying these classics, and this is one he would dearly love to win. He looks over his shoulder. He's got a great team around him now. They are all here. When we get to the climb of the Mur de Grammont, with about 16 kilometres to go, about 9 kilometres up the road, we are going to witness a holocaust in this peloton, Paul. Every man with any ounce of strength left has to go.
It's got to be done. We're going to get a chance here. I hope to listen into the American team Garmin Cervelo and what their tactics are going to be.
No riding. You are Tour, do not ride. Do not ride. Just sit in, rest as much as you can. Do not ride. If it's a sprint for third, it's a sprint for third. If it's for first, it's first. But no riding. Just sit in. Let the other teams do the work. No more riding. We're just surviving for the sprint now.
So that was Jonathan Waters there, and it was pretty plain for all now. The team Garmin Cervelo, the American squad in the race, have now been told to follow wheels and take what they can get from this event.
Well, they basically pretty much made that decision, Phil. They're riding for third place. And if he would send a couple of riders to the front, the team that surprises me in their absence is Omega Pharma Lotto, because their man, Philippe Gilbert, I reckon, has got the legs to get over the Mur de Grammont. They should be at the front, contributing to the pacemaking with Team BMC Racing.
It's been such a good race, though. Everybody has given all of their strength. These incredible professional cyclists today. Quicker by something like 3 hours than any of the fun riders, so-called, yesterday, who rode the course. Some 20,000 cyclists did this route. Volkler takes some more food out of his pocket. Might be very vital, as we've got an attack by Stein de Volder. He's had his ups and downs today, but he's lifted the pace now.
Oh, he certainly has. Another man who, although he wears the champion of Belgium's jersey as the road champion, he's also been the champion in the individual time trial, and he too now has got a little bit of pride for Belgium on his shoulders.
Well, this de Volder drives on here now. Somebody has to, he said, and I'll do it. So the peloton still quizzical here, not sure what's going to happen. The gap is pegged just under 1 minute. It's 2 riders versus the rest.
We're looking, it's not possible, he's too strong. He make a breakaway from 60 Ks. He's too strong.
Yes, and Wilfred should remind himself who led him into that breakaway, and it was his rider, Tom Bonen.
Yeah, but now you can see a little bit of organisation. Team Katusha sending a rider up to ride here as well, because their man Pippo Pozzato is still in this leading group of riders. But look at the damage. There's somebody got a problem at the back end of the group here, and this is Marcus Burkhardt.
Well, that's a sad loss, because he was working very, very hard for Team BMC. He's gone off the back. The gap has gone up to 61 seconds. We're 23 kilometres out from the finishing line now. And still doing all of the work on the front, as he will expect to do now as he carries Chavanel towards the finish. He won't carry him to the finish because he may not outsprint him. He's got to drop him, probably on the Mur de Grammont.
Well, we're 6 kilometres away now, 4 miles of racing from going into the town of Gerardsbergen, or Grammont if you're living on the French side. Funny thing is, the town of Grammont is right on the linguistic border. On one side you go into town, it says Gerardsbergen, the other side it says Grammont.
Now each person looks at himself. Stein de Volde here has just for the moment fallen back into second wheel.
Hincapie in third wheel looking very comfortable. They've obviously, I think, made the decision to work for Greg van Avermaet and Alessandro Ballan. You can just recognise Alessandro Ballan because just around the sleeves of his jersey he's got the bands of a former world champion, as George Hincapie also has the bands with the stars and stripes on it as a former American national champion.
Lonely road ahead now, but he's a familiar face when he rides a time trial by himself. He's used to all that. Fabian Cancellara, he'll be thinking all the way along the road, when can I attack? 41, Philippe Gilbert, been put in his place by a flat tyre today, but he's back in the race at the front again. Third these last 2 years. There are still a number of riders willing to move to the front. Garmin Cervelo now under orders. No more pacemaking, follow wheels, get what you can out of the Tour of Flanders.
Well, Cancellara's not getting any assistance at all.
So we're looking now at the time trial in motion here of Fabian Cancellara. He is 22 kilometres from a repeat victory. He still has a problem with Chavanel, but the gap is holding it completely at 1 minute here, and they don't seem to know how to reduce it. We're heading towards the Mur de Grammont. We are going to hear the biggest explosion ever on that climb, because they've got to launch there. Anybody with any strength must leave the peloton on the Mur de Grammont.
Well, it's 4.5 kilometres now to the start of the climb of the Mur de Grammont, and going through the mind of Fabian Cancellara is, what do I do with Sylvain Chavanel? He's a great bike rider, he's a very strong bike rider. I rode across the gap to catch him, but I don't want to ride into the city of Merbeek with him on my back wheel, because there's always the chance that something could go wrong in the sprint.
But this is an amazing demonstration by the man of the moment in the world of cycling. He had a magical year last year, and he's on his way to repeating it all this year. He's already won the Grand Prix E3. The E3, by the way, is a number of one of the cross-European motorways here, freeways, and they name it after the event, or the event's named after the motorway. And Cancellara just he doesn't even look as though he's even thinking about his problem on his back wheel, does he?
Not at all. All he's thinking about is, how do I get to the Mur de Grammont? That's the next most important place for him. And if you remember, this time 12 months ago, he was away with a rider from Team Quickstep by the name of Tom Bonen. And Bonen was just dropped like a limpet mine on the slopes of that climb, and Cancellara took off to a lone victory.
Yes, I can't imagine that Tom Bonen really thought that move would have worked today, but he tried it anyway and put a different face on the race. A long way out from home. I'm not sure whether Cancellara, he's an opportunist when he attacks Cancellara. He goes when the moment is right as far as he feels. He doesn't think how far there is still to race. He's gone a long way out again today. And now we're down to 20 kilometres to go. It's not so far to the finish, just 2 climbs to come, but they're hard enough.
They are very hard. The last 2 climbs of the day are, of course, the famous Mur de Grammont, which goes over the top of the Kapelmuur, which has been extended since the time that I was racing. Used to go straight over the top. Now the mean old organisers take you to a right-hand turn and take you right past the church at the top before dropping down to the Bosberg, which is the final climb of the day at 12 kilometres to go.
Yes, the church on the wall, right on top of the climb, where there is a huge crowd waiting to welcome the riders today. This race just gets more and more popular. Huge crowds all along the route, except now because we're way out in the country just now, heading towards Gerardsbergen, which is not very far as the crow flies from the finishing line here in Meerbeke. But Chavanel has not made any attempt to help him. Cancellara knows the rules of the sport. He won't help him win a race. He's going to annoy him, and if he gets a chance, he'll attack him.
Well, he tried a couple of times to get Chavanel to come forward and share the pace-making. Once he knew, he probably figured out what the team tactics would be for Team Quickstep, so he thought, right, all I can do now is just get on with this and pretend I'm riding on my own. Kept starting to come down a fraction, but they've got to catch him before he gets to the Mur de Grammont. Otherwise, it's all over bar the singing.
I tell you what, though, Cancellara is extremely confident in the way he's riding. Now, BMC, there were 7 of them lying astern at the front. Now we're down to just 1 here. That's not a good sign. Stein de Volder's team there, Vacansoleil, also putting 2 men up in the chase.
Leif Hoster is the second rider there from Team Katusha in the red and white jersey.
He's hurting.
He's holding, I think he's holding the record for second places in this race. He's finished in second place in the Ronde van Vlaanderen on 3 occasions.
So there we are, as the riders now thread the way here through the lanes. There's the massive cars behind every one of those drivers, hoping somebody can do something about Fabian Cancellara. He takes us now towards the Mur de Grammont. 19 kilometres, Paul. 52 seconds. Your magical gap, what is a minute for 10 kilometres? Very soon that's going to be the formula.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Phil, that is for mere mortals, and I don't think Fabian Cancellara is a mere mortal. He's a superman on a day like this, and it's very difficult to pull a man like him back into the fold. As I said, that's where we're going to. That's the town of Gerardsbergen in Flemish, or Grammont in French, and the race goes straight over the top there, right in the middle.
Right in the middle, you saw the little spire of the chapel. That's the Chapel Muir. That's where we're headed to. It is as steep as it looks, up a cobble climb. It has been immortalised by this very race. Many riders over the years have launched the winning attack there. Is that where Cancellara will rid himself of the man behind him, Sylvain Chavanel? If Chavanel is unhitched, I fear he'll be picked up by the chase. The race will be for second.
No, it certainly was. The team car comes up alongside there. In fact, the team manager in the car today riding alongside Bjarne Riis is Torsten Smit, a former extremely good sprinter from Germany. But they will be on tenterhooks right now to figure out whether or not Cancellara has still got that power to get rid of Chavanel on the slopes of this climb. And in fact, look at the time gap. It's starting to tumble down a fraction. Most of that because of the work done by BMC.
And also maybe Cancellara. This is the main street in Gerardsbergen. The far end, we turn left and go over the mountain. It may be Cancellara is slowing down just that little bit to prepare himself for what he knows must come now, and that is an attack on the wall. At the top end of the street is where we make the left turn, and then there's only one way out of this town. It's over the top.
Well, it's over the town square. The town square is made up of cobbles. Then after the town square, they start to climb up. And once it gets steep, you take a right-hand turn and you're on the fabled cobblestones of the Mur de Grammont. This is the town square and a massive VIP tent.
This is the end of the main road in Gerardsbergen. Turn left. We are on the Mur de Grammont now, the penultimate climb. And Cancellara, the gap is down to 40 seconds. There's a terrific chase on behind. It is everybody. We're going to rename this 95th, the Tour of Flanders, the Battle of the Wall, because that's what it's come down to.
And that is exactly where the wall is. You can see the main field, Phil. They are in the streets of Gerardsbergen. They're going over the town square, the place right in the middle where there's a massive big TV screen where most of these people will be watching and witnessing the finish. But what they're wondering now is what's going to happen on the slopes of the wall. Here is the left-hand turn. It starts to dig up right in front of you. The gap's down to 27 seconds. Cancellara very shortly will take the famous right-hand bend onto the slopes of the very difficult cobbles.
As that attack by Tom Bonen tempted Cancellara to attack too early to win the race. That is becoming a possibility now as the free-for-all starts on the bottom of the climb. The gap is down to 19 seconds now. Gilbert is moving up on the left of our picture.
Well, Postuma in the middle now. He's trying to set something up for his man, Lars Boom. Pippo Pozzato for Katusha over on the right-hand side. Tom Boden is there, and look at this. The gap is always coming down. It's 10 seconds. When they go around the corner, this is going to be race all together.
From a done deal to a huge question mark now. 11 seconds is the gap. The Mur de Grammont is playing a huge role this year in the Tour of Flanders. And still sitting on the back wheel is Chavanel. He hasn't been unhitched. There's the pack as they make the right turn.
Well, they've taken all the service cars off. They have to go to the left-hand side. They won't allow cars up the Mur de Grammont. They're in almost the same straight now as Fabian Cancellara. He's 15 kilometres to go, and maybe this has been a tactic by the others to force him to come out and play early on. 475 metres long at 20% the average gradient. Now has Fabian Cancellara been playing a game with the main field, and will he go again as Philippe Gilbert pulls himself back into this race?
Well, this is amazing. It was a done deal, and now it most certainly is not. 15 kilometres from the top. Chavanel has gone up the mountain on the wheel of Cancellara, who I think is in serious trouble here. After all that, it has reverted back to the chasers. Cancellara's face giving nothing away here, unlike Chavanel behind. Gilbert is there right behind him.
Ballan is there, Fletcher's there, Tom Bonen is there, all of the big names. Even George Hincapie is in about 12th position. Now Cancellara, this time last year, he rode away from everybody, and now he's turning up the pressure once again, Phil.
Well, I've never seen a Tour of Flanders like this. I've never seen a peloton catch up on the Mur de Grammont, and this man refuses to give up. He's lifted the pace again, and we've seen so many of the top riders, including Bone and Johan Museo, kill the field off at this very point. He's got a new break going here, and still Chavanel hangs on.
Well, Chavanel is digging deep into that suitcase of courage here this afternoon, because he knows this is a little piece of history possibly for French cycling. Bonen is just about on the back of that group. He really doesn't have that acceleration, but once again Fabian Cancellara is the man who's leading the dance.
Beneath the chapel, and as we now wind away over the top of the climb, Cancellara still leads, but if he looks over his shoulder, and he just has, he's got 3 for company and more on the way. Ballan has crossed the gap, Gilbert has crossed the gap.
And now he's going to say, right guys, you want to win the Tour of Flanders this afternoon, you better participate in some pacemaking with me, because otherwise it's all going to come back together. And I'm surprised to see, as you are, Phil, that the race came back together on the Mur de Grammont. I don't think I have ever seen that before.
I don't think I have, Paul, and you should know better than me. You've been there, although you weren't at the front at the time. We'll say nothing about that. As we watch 9 riders potentially coming together now with the serious danger now, BMC's Alessandro Ballan. And Bjorn Leukemans again is the Vacances Soleil rider who has bridged that gap.
He certainly is, and now they need to get themselves organised. There you can see the damage that's been done by the Mur de Grammont. It almost all came back together until, of course, Fabian Cancellara decided to open up the gas. Now Philippe Gilbert, dreaming of being the second French-speaking Belgian to win this race at the Tour of Flanders. And if this race goes, Phil, Fabian Cancellara is going to have a big thing on his plate to try and beat Philippe Gilbert in the sprint.
The top of the hill, and they're more or less all together now, so it's a big question mark. Who is going to be the boss of the Bosberg? That's the last climb, and it's coming up.
It certainly is, and we're now looking at Alessandro Ballan coming up to the front. Just behind him, Cancellara trying to figure out now what's the next tactic. What am I going to do next in a race like this? And Philippe Gilbert will be extremely happy, because he probably has got the best punch coming out of this group.
Well, these 5 riders, there's 4 more trying to reach them. Surely nobody else can get there now. It is still a strong man's race, as it always is at this stage of the race now. The Bosberg itself is cobbled. It's on a straight road. It's in the woods. It is a difficult climb at this stage of the race. And once over the top, of course, you're on your road to home.
Well, you've 12 kilometres, but the way this race is, it's thrown up some strange permutations this afternoon, as again somebody's trying to sneak off the front of that leading group of 5 riders. And Geraint Thomas is coming back into this race here with George Hincapie.
Isn't he? He's bringing George back up to the action here. Geraint Thomas and George Hincapie, I think they're pretty good friends when they're not racing against each other. Team Sky, Team BMC. George is crossing the gap. What a great ally he would be to Alessandro Ballan if he can reach them.
Well, I have to say, considering the amount of work that Geraint Thomas, Phil, has done for Juan Antonio Fletcher, theoretically he shouldn't still be in the game. But here he is with George Hincapie riding across the gap. Now, if George gets into this group, he's going to start having to think, I've got a chance of winning this, because cast your mind back to a 19, 20-year-old George Hincapie. What a finishing sprint he had.
Yes, he did. And let's remember, too, that's around about the age almost of Geraint Thomas. We're looking at the face of the leaders here. On the right is Fabian Cancellara now. This group is highly select. Greg van Avermaet is still here. A chase group has developed, and George Hincapie is here. Just at the back is Geraint Thomas. There's a coming together. There's the difference between the two groups. We're going to see about 10 riders head towards the Bosberg.
Well, BMC are in a very nice position here this afternoon, because they've actually not only got Alessandro Ballan, Greg van Avermaet not too far out of the picture, but coming back into the picture, big old George Hincapie.
Well, this has been a remarkable race all the way down, so befitting the 95th edition of the Ronde. But there is no outstanding rider now. And there's no sign of what Cancellara is thinking or feeling. He didn't look surprised or disappointed on the climb when all these riders joined him. It's almost as if he's just sticking to his guns and getting on with the job. And he's saying to himself, I can still win this race.
Well, he's just trying to figure out a new permutation, if at all possible, and look at that. In fact, Geraint Thomas has come back into this race with Juan Antonio Fletcher.
He's done his job again at the most crucial part of the event. Thomas has brought Fletcher back into play. Just how many riders are going to be left by the end now? This is the last climb of the day here. Gilbert gives it his best shot as we climb the Bosberg at 12 kilometres to go. Are these the death throes from Philippe Gilbert? Last chance to rid himself of the group.
No, this is the move that Philippe Gilbert has been planning for a whole year, to see whether or not he had the power to get out of this pack. This is a good move by him, and they're not responding behind, and Gilbert has hit them at just the right time, and it's Alessandro Ballan who's starting to take up the chase behind.
Well, I think they're responding, but they can't go any quicker, Paul, at the moment. Ballan has found his legs, though, and he's starting to close it down. Gilbert, those cobblestones are sending aches up those big thighs of his. Can he keep the pressure on over the top and then settle down? He's opening a little bit of a gap. Trouble at the back. Cancellara is in desperate trouble and looking for help, as the champion of last year may have misjudged the distance this.
Well, they said, Phil, this was Fabian Cancellara's race to lose. They forced him to attack a long way out from the finish line, and I think right now he's paid for the generosity that he's put into this race this afternoon, because he's in not the same position as he was last year. This man is in Fabian Cancellara's position from 12 months ago. Philippe Gilbert.
At 11 kilometres to go now, Gilbert has played his cards. The man who's finished third the last 2 years knows now he's got to win, and he's got to be alone to do it. As he now moves clear, Ballan is going to reorganise the chase, I think.
Well, now is the time for Philippe Gilbert to give everything that he's ever had in the sport of professional cycling into those legs of his.
Well, this is the scene on the finishing line there, and I'm not sure whether those people are related to Philippe Gilbert, but they're certainly getting excited. He is a very, very popular rider. As Paul Sherwin said earlier, he's one of the few Belgian people who speaks both the languages fluently, Flemish and French. So he's popular on both sides of the divide.
Well, he hasn't cracked it just yet, Phil, because just every time we look back down the road there is still the figure of Alessandro Ballan of BMC Racing.
Well, Ballan last won this event back in 2004. He got a 4th place in it in 2008. Nothing since then, and he's back in this big time, and he was looking forward to today. Cancellara, now all the hills are behind the big man. Can he come back into the scene? And he might well do.
Well, this race is not yet done. Gilbert has made the move. He did it on the Bosberg, trying to be the boss of the Bosberg, but he's only got a slight advantage over the group, which is starting to reform behind him. Ballan has still got extremely good power because he's holding Gilbert. He's got him pegged.
Well, it's hurting Gilbert. He knows now it's everything that's left in that body of his. He's 28 3/4 years of age, has his 29th birthday during the Tour de France this year. He doesn't always ride the Tour de France, but he might this year.
Well, Chavanel has seen that move and the possibility of a chance to get across to Ballan as Fabian Cancellara claws himself back into this race.
But look at Staf Sheerlinks, a rider from the Willems team who's ridden so well all day as a team. I've still got Sheerlinks here in with a real shout. He's coming up on the back wheel of Cancellara.
Well, now they're starting to reform her because Cancellara, at 10 kilometres to go, is pulling himself back into this race. One lone leader. He only has a 9-second advantage over a group now which will be prepared to organise the chase. Ballan and Chavanel, I think, will start to collaborate and see if they can pull that man back.
Well, this is an incredibly select group now. Leukemans is the other rider who has come across here. They haven't mentioned Sheerlinks, but he's here. There they are. So we've got Sheerlinks, Cancellara, Ballan, Chavanel, Leukemans. They are the 5 riders trying to cross to Philippe Gilbert. Gone is Tom Bonen, who started all these troubles in the first place. But in hindsight, it may well have destroyed Cancellara because it forced Cancellara to go too soon.
He went a long way, about 47 kilometres from the finish was his move, and you've got to be a special guy to do something like that. Philippe Gilbert right now is pegged at 10 seconds, but it's an organised group behind him. I wouldn't like to be in the team car, Phil, because I bet they're extremely nervous.
So this is Cancellara in the chase group. Philippe Gilbert, the figure we didn't expect to see on his own, not half an hour to go. But he's giving it all now. A man has won 41 races in his career that began back in 2003. But this would be, I think, and he's won some good ones, Paul, this would be the biggest win of his life.
Well, this is the one that he wants. There's 2 races in his career, Phil, that he really dearly wants to win. And of course, one is Liège-Bastogne-Liège, because as far as the French-speaking Belgians are concerned, that is their most beautiful classic. However, all Belgians want to win this one, the Tour of Flanders. If he can do that this afternoon, he really is going to go down in the record books. But the gap is down to 6 seconds, and they are working well in the chase group.
Well, he's managed 2 fourths in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He's had 2 thirds in the Tour of Flanders. Is he going to make it first today? He will get immense support here in the finishing area in Ninova Meerbeker, as he now knows he's totally committed. This is it. There's no going back on it, and just don't look over your shoulder.
Well, it's now just 7 seconds, and I think he's gone a little bit too early, and he doesn't have the power to pull back those, to stay away from those riders.
We are looking now at Philippe Gilbert as he dangles by a scant 7 seconds with 9 kilometres to go in the 95th Tour of Flanders. And they're going to catch him. He's got Staf Sheerlinks, Fabian Cancellara, Alejandro Ballan, Sylvain Chavanel and Bjorn Leukemans are putting him back in his place at about 8.5 kilometres from the finish.
Well, as a non-gambling man, I wouldn't really want to go out and take a gamble now on who's going to win the Tour of Flanders this afternoon, because it could go any which way you want.
Neither would I. From an outstanding odds-on favourite to win, you might get better odds on Cancellara now. So they are all together now, and there are 9 kilometres left to run, with your guess as good as mine as to who will win today.
Well, Cancellara, he seems to have recovered somewhat, a little flick of the wrist, and he has got the ability to put in a fine sprint. But Phil, when you've worked as hard as he has in a race like this, it's difficult to sprint at the end of the stage.
And here comes the next train, and George Hincapie is in this group as they come up towards the leaders. So too Juan Antonio Fletcher. This is a whole new combination at 8 kilometres to go.
Well, I just remember, Phil, just looking at Twitter this morning, I just looked at the comment made by Cadell Evans. He was looking forward to a very rare day off and watching television, motorsport to begin with, and then he said something rather strange. He said, I've got a special interest this afternoon in the Tour of Flanders, and now we know why. Two men in the break.
The 2 men we expected have both made it, and it's been such a hard race to stay in touch with the leaders today. Cancellara, the man to beat over, looking a very lonely figure on the left of our race, but what an absolutely brilliant race this has been.
Chavanel looking over his shoulder, he wants to know what's the next move for him this afternoon. Just looking there at Tom Bonen sitting on the back of this group, he must be feeling a little bit more comfortable, because he almost turned the race upside down and ruined it for his teammate Chavanel. Now he's back in with a chance of a win.
Well, I think, and I only think, that we've got 12 riders together right now, but I think 6 riders have joined 6 riders, as we now have 12 riders at the front, the strong men of a really hard-fought Ronde van Vlaanderen. This is Greg Van Avermaet, grits his teeth again.
Well, Staff Sheerlinks is probably, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way, the odd man out. We've followed him for many years, Phil, as we see this move now coming from Balan.
Oh, it is Balan who started the move. The man who won this race a few years ago now, but has found his legs again with Team BMC. Another determined favourite, giving it his best shot. But it looks as though it's not going to be good enough again. Remember, there are no more hills now. If you take this down to the sprint, goodness knows which way it will go. We are now 6 kilometres from the finish as Alessandro Balan, a former winner of this race, looks over his shoulder. There are now 12 riders together, and amongst the riders who've just joined us include George Hincapie and Geraint Thomas and Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Well, sitting on the back of the group, of course, one of the best sprinters in the group is Tom Bonen, but it might not come down to the sprint here this afternoon as another move goes over the top and Tom Bonen covers it.
It can never go down to the sprint, surely, as they'll throw attack after attack. This is now Nicky Nuyens who's trying, monitored there by Tom Bonen, who knows, oh, it's not Tom Bonen who's got there in second place at all.
Chavanel.
Chavanel is still doing his job.
Bonen sitting about 5th or 6th position. He's just waiting now to see whether or not he's got the sprint left at the end of this race. He's going to gamble on it being a sprint, but a lot of riders, look at this. Geraint Thomas makes the move now. He's covered by Sylvain Chavanel.
The man from Wales, they've never produced a cyclist of this calibre from Wales, as now Geraint Thomas goes. Remember, it's 50 years to the day. The only British rider to win this race was Tom Simpson, and now Geraint Thomas has been superb today.
And watch out, Phil, because Geraint Thomas, coming from a track background, has got a very good chance of causing the surprise sprint. But Fletcher now takes over after the work done by his young teammate.
That's the word. He's attacked. This is a big attack by Juan Antonio Fletcher now. Determination. These are desperate men. They haven't got the sprint to cope with the likes of Bonen or even Cancellara. So they're trying to break it up. They're running out of road. 5 kilometres to go.
Nervous moments now for all of these riders. Fabian Cancellara thinking, why did I do that? Why did I not have as much power as I did last year? As Bonen now starts to feel more and more confident as he comes up to the finish line with 5 kilometres left to go. Looks over his shoulders into the face of George Hincapie, who's made the junction here. Former national champion of the United States and a great ambassador for American cycling.
12 riders as I make it. It could be 13 here. But everyone has given 100% of the effort, so now it's who can stay that little bit longer that will mix it today. Is this Lars Bohm or is it Lisa who's going?
Looks to me like
neither. It's Langeveld who's got up there.
Yep, and Fletcher taking up the pace. Lukermans are pulling off, and this is a bad move if you allow a guy to go clear that close to the finish.
Well, this is a very, very good move by Langeveld, the best so far in the last few kilometres to open any gap, but it's being shut down straight away, and it's BMC doing the work, and it's Alessandro Balan who gets across. Everybody looking as if somebody else is supposed to make the move. Here he comes again, Fabian Cancellara, and that's caused a panic. They're all racing after his wheel. They're like snapping turtles now.
Well, they certainly are, but Chavanel has still got something in that box of his as he comes across to the wheel of Cancellara, and grappling to get on the back is Nick Nuyens.
Well, the Belgians are determined to make the 95th theirs. If it kills them on the way they're riding, it might well do that because they've chased everything today. They're 3 kilometres to go. Chavanel has been absolutely superb.
I'd give him the title of honorary Flandrian here this afternoon, and that's a fair title for a Frenchman to have because he has ridden a great race. Cancellara still feel they will not help him. Flick of the wrist there saying, come on, let's work together, but they're all looking round waiting to see how the race is developing.
Well, Paul, win or lose, Cancellara has been superb. Here comes Gilbert now. They're all at it, followed by Balan again. Then it looks as though we've got Langeveld trying to get on the train too.
Well, this may well be the move. They need to respond immediately to a move like this because Cancellara now is starting to smell the victory. He knows if he wants to win, he's got to get away from this group because
Correct.
I don't think he can beat Tom Bonen in the sprint, but he could probably handle Chavanel and Nick Nuyens.
Well, they've allowed him to prise open the gap again. It's been painful, but it's there at 3 kilometres. Actually 2.5 to go now. And Chavanel now is prepared to work with Cancellara. Nuyens is the big danger for me. He can sprint.
No, he certainly can, and that would be good for Belgium to get themselves a sprint, but there's hardly any cooperation coming from Cancellara. As you can see, Team BMC sitting at the front of that group, trying to pull it all back together.
Well, I've got, I don't think in my records, I don't remember Noyens ever getting in the top 10 finish. Oh, I beg his pardon, because he was second 2 years ago in the Tour of France. 2008 he was second, Noyens. But they're getting so twitchy here. They're like Punch and Judy looking over the shoulders at the race behind. This is the race. This is the podium. And Cancellara, whatever he gets, has been absolutely brilliant today. We've seen him almost destroyed, and he's come back out of the dustbin and done it again.
Well, that's the power of this man, the courage of Fabian Cancellara. He really is looking for the victory here this afternoon. Now there's another move coming across. That's Juan Antonio Fletcher and Tom Bonen.
The moves are following. These are now desperate moves. We're inside 2 kilometres to go. Last year's winner, Cancellara, not the runaway. There'll be no time to show his little pocket mascot to his daughter this time, as he did up the home straight a year ago. But he's still got there as we look to the 1 kilometre banner. 3 riders, 1 Frenchman, a Belgian and a Swiss rider going for gold.
Well, they are halfway across the gap. There is Juan Antonio Fletcher. They've gone inside of the final kilometre. 1 kilometre left to go. Cancellara is trying to make it the double. He's trying to get that second victory in the Tour of Flanders, while Noyens, Phil, is just sitting there. Watch out for Noyens in the Saxo Bank jersey in second position.
Well, Cancellara won't ease off those pedals. He knows they'll be on him in a flash. They're preparing for the right turn. They take the right turn. They are lining up for the finish. Desperate moments to cross the gap. This is do or die for Gilbert, I think.
Well, it's not. It's Tom Bonen. He's seen the possibility and he wants to make the junction before the start of this finishing sprint. Cancellara has seen that. Cancellara is now picking it up because he wants to get the win too.
Bonen hooks up, he's not quite on, he's just off our picture in fact, but he's not going to make it. Cancellara has seen this. Now that is how to become a champion, because Noyens has gone over him. Nick Noyens is going to take this for Belgium, and he's just about going to hold off. A little bit of a kick there from Cancellara, but it will be on the line. Noyens, and I think in second place will be Chavanel, and I think in third place there will be Fabian Cancellara. Well, Tom Bonen tried to make amends in the end, but he got on the back and Cancellara saw him coming.
Well, if it had been another couple of seconds, Phil, then it would have been a different picture, I think, there, because Bonen, all he needed was a pause by those 3 riders at the front and he'd have made it, and Noyens played a perfect tactical game to get the win for Belgium.
Yes, and that is a very, very good win indeed for Belgium, who have now won this race 67 times, 66 times with Flandrian riders. Nick Noyens pulled that one off big, and that really was a tremendous result for Nick Noyens, and a great result too for the Saxo Bank Sungard team, who saw virtually all of their riders boycott them and move over to form Leopard Trek this year. And what's happened? Bjarne Riis has landed the winner of the Tour of Flanders. That is a huge result for Bjarne Riis, the Danish manager. And Nick Noyens gets the victory at nearly 31 years of age. He will be back in May. Coming up, there's the man who's done everything he could possibly do. Last time we saw him in that situation was when he tried to win the road race in Switzerland 2 years ago, the World Professional Road Race at that. Here comes what is not a very animated sprint, but it's taken out nicely by Tyler Farrer there. Well done, Tyler. Sweeps up from the rest of that group. He's had a very good day. They did all they could do, and it was the sort of race that could have gone so many ways today, because everybody gave it their best shot, and it was the one that worked in the end that counted. And after all, it was still Cancellara's huge effort that decided it, even though Nick Noyens will be the man you'll see on the winner's podium in a few minutes' time. Tremendous result for Noyens. Bad luck for Fabio Cancellara, fabulous Cancellara, but what a way to lose your title. He was absolutely superb today. That's what winning a year ago does for you, and he's still got to dream of Paris-Roubaix next week. Tremendous ride. Can't say any more than that for Cancellara. A true champion. But in amongst it here, I should imagine down there is probably Nick Noyens. There he is. He's already won once this year. He won the race across Flanders, the Tour of Flanders race, just a couple of weeks ago. He only had one victory last year, and that's in the Tour of Austria, where he won the 5th stage. But now he has produced an incredible performance to win the Tour of Flanders. That's completed for him a career which started back in 2002. Now, we're waiting to make little room for him to get into the finishing area here. He read that one right, getting away in the last couple of kilometres. I still haven't got confirmation of the result, but my eyes sort of gave me Chavanel just in second place. Cancellara would be in third, Boonen in fourth. But they'll give us that very shortly. Let's have a look at the sprint again now. Cancellara, he looked over his shoulder to see who was coming, and he saw the big figure of Tom Boonen crossing the gap very rapidly indeed. It was a desperate move by Boonen. And of course, had he got there in the breakaway, he would have won the sprint, but that wasn't to be. Cancellara was forced to lead it out, chased all the way by Nick Noyens, and he went early enough for Nick Noyens to recover from the fast acceleration and strength of Cancellara, and then dive for the inside. Now watch how quickly Chavanel closes in. Little bit of a flick there by Fabian, but it's just the effort of the day, and that confirms the result for us there. Noyens, Chavanel and Cancellara. And you can see Tom Boonen be very annoyed with himself off the podium this year. He was second last year, but he never did get on. That sprint started just too early for him. He wasn't quite on the back. As Noyens gets the victory, his 25th of his career, which, as I say, started back in 2002. He used to be on the Quick Step team as well. He said goodbye to them via Cofidis, Rabobank, and now his new team of Saxo Bank, and gives them a major result of the season. Still a big group just arrived here. It wasn't really a sprint, but Christoph Goddard of AG2R brought them home. And that's the reaction in the car. Bjorn Rees, he's almost looking emotional there now, because he's watching it on television. He cannot believe it. Steady on, boys, no hands off the wheel. That is a huge result for Saxo Bank, it really is. I've never really got to the bottom as to why Leopard Trek almost en masse walked out on Bjorn Rees. They set to form this new team, but it seemed a very strange setup because the team itself has not yet formed as it was intended, I don't think, but I don't know. In front of a massive crowd. A race which was full on from the very first minute to the very last metre. 50 kilometres covered in the first hour. They were averaging 55 kilometres in the first half hour. So the result, Nick Noyens gets the win ahead of Sylvain Chavanel, almost became the first French winner since 1992. Cancellara third, Tom Boonen fourth, Langeveld fifth, Hincapie in sixth place. Another superb result for George Hincapie.
Shit! Twet. Zet wij aan de achterkant laten liggen. Godverdomme.
A new team manager for you personally. What's the part of Bjorn Rees in this victory?
I think that change of team was really important for me. They gave me immediately a lot of confidence. Of course, there's the person of Bjorn Rees, but also the other people, sport directors and all the staff, the riders. I just feel really good in the group, and for me that's the most important thing to perform.
Thanks very much. Congratulations. One question also for the big favorite of the day. Third on the podium, Fabian Cancellara. You were so close. What's your first reaction to what happened after an unbelievable race with the breakaway and then getting caught at the wall and then the finish, the sprint?
Yeah, even when you're super strong, you're beatable. I think that's I knew it always since on the beginning from the start. But I think on the end, I mean, we tried with the team. We done the max what we could. In the end, I mean, on the muur until to the finish line, I mean, it was just like I was so dead on the end. I had so much cramps on the end also, and on the finish line, I mean, before we came to the finish here, when we went with Noyens and then Silva, I said to myself, hey, I was already with Silva in the front, and yeah, and then I have seen also Boonen coming from the back, and I haven't really saw how much meters it was, but I was thinking maybe the other one's on the wheel, and
I just opened the sprint, but I opened it too early. But on the end, I think that's the race how it is, and I think on the end I should be still happy about this third place, because to defend again, to win here was really hard. All been racing against my team or been racing against me, and with this result we still can be happy about it.
Thanks very much for a great race. Thanks.
Yes, I think Cancellara absolutely right. Everybody was gunning for him today, and he produced the goods, and he had to be on the podium after a performance like that. There's no doubt about that.
Definitely an average day for me, but I was still able to follow and still finish up there in the first group. So I'm content with that, and hopefully looking for better next weekend.
You're not surprised that teams like Omega Pharma Lotto or Garmin Cervelo, with good riders in that break, didn't come and help you in the chase?
Absolutely. It was up to them to help as well. I mean, there was a Tour of Flanders out there. You can't just sit around and hope for top 10. You got to go for the win. So we were surprised that we didn't get any help.
Okay. Yeah. Well, George, it looked pretty much at one stage as if Cancellara had sewed up the victory, but your team, BMC Racing, went to the front and nailed him back.
Yeah, BMC has had a great season so far. We probably had more guys represented in that first group than anybody, so we took the responsibility to bring it back. Alessandro was really good today, did a couple good moves. I wasn't on a great day. Definitely an average day for me, but I was still able to follow and still finish up there in the first group. So I'm content with that, and hopefully looking for better next weekend.
You're not surprised that teams like Omega Pharma Lotto or Garmin Cervelo, with good riders in that break, didn't come and help you in the chase?
Absolutely. It was up to them to help as well. I mean, there was a Tour of Flanders out there. You can't just sit around and hope for top 10. You got to go for the win. So we were surprised that we didn't get any help, and we sacrificed all of our guys to bring it back, and fortunately we were able to bring it back there on the mirror.
If I can say, George Hincapie, the elder statesman, although you didn't think you had a good day, it wasn't too bad.
Not too bad. Top 10 Tour of Flanders. My opinion, the hardest race in cycling. There's nothing like this. So I'm content, and like I said, hopefully better next weekend.
Next weekend is a special race for you because Paris-Roubaix, it's something that you've always dreamed of, and if you get everything right on the day, with this team that you've got, BMC Racing, you could do the win.
Yeah, I need luck. Like you said, I'm getting a little bit older, elder statesman, so I need to be on a super day. But I'm content. I mean, this year I started off the year feeling great, better than ever. So, even though I'm getting older, I still got some good legs when it counts, and hope I have good luck and good legs next weekend. All right, thank you.
Good luck, mate.
Well, there they are, the three principal winners of what has been a tremendous Tour of Flanders. The first prize going to the man in the middle for Saxo Bank. Who was the hero of the day? It's for you to decide. Fabian Cancellara coming home in third place when he was a markman throughout. And in second place today, another hero on the left of our picture, Sylvain Chavanel. But no doubt who the winner was in the end, he took it in the sprint. Nick Noyens is now a major classic winner with a first place in the 95th edition of the Ronde van Vlaanderen. But what a race this was. And perhaps we should all be celebrating something of an American victory as well, because for the fourth year in a row, the American-made Specialized bikes have been ridden by the winner. Well, it was a great ride as well by the American George Hincapie. He fought all day to keep his face at the front end of that peloton, and in the end he crossed the line in a magnificent 6th place. George really loves racing in this part of Belgium. And for the defending champion, Fabian Cancellara, what can you say? He rode like a champion, but it just shows you occasionally champions can be beaten. Well, as soon as Fabian Cancellara finished spraying the champagne, he found Paul Sherwin waiting for him downstairs.
The strongest didn't win today.
Yeah, also this can happen. I think Superman cannot win everything and cannot win always. And but still, to be as a top favorite, to finish on a podium, to done this, I say for myself, still an amazing race. Finishing that, first time went good. Second time went also good, but on the finish line then was just like
also me can have like cramps. I mean, that's just normal. I have seen this last week in Harderwijk with Bram tanking, and I have seen Bonen coming from the back, and that's just. I just had to move. Otherwise, maybe there was other ones that coming from behind, and then we will not even make the podium. And I think, yeah, I can be still happy. We have done still a nice job, the whole team. Because, you know, when all racing against the team, all racing against me, then it's not so easy.
Fabian, when you saw the gap at 1 minute, did you think this is game done, and were you surprised to see the main field come back?
Honestly, no. I knew it that 1 minute is always nice, is always good, gives you motivation. But then suddenly I had this bad feeling that I had to really get everything out what I had to go over this muur. When you came with cramps, then you get nowhere. I mean, that's how it is. And when you have BMC on the back with 6 riders, what I heard, yeah, Superman against 6 riders is not possible. Sorry, I mean the race was not maybe what the weather condition expected. It was not this special day where maybe with rain and wind could maybe a big difference making. And it was just a rolling roller coaster until to the end, and finishing with this roller coaster third makes me still happy. Second in Sanremo, won a race last weekend, and being third today is a top favorite. Still, that's good.
Thank you.
Nick, can I just get 2 quick questions in English? For different people, some races are beautiful, but for a Belgian to win the Ronde van Vlaanderen, that's something very, very special.
Yeah, of course. It's one of the most beautiful races in the world. Maybe for me, it's the most beautiful race in the world. So I wouldn't say it's a big surprise, but I didn't expect it. Sure, not today, because I didn't have the best feeling, but. I was gambling a little bit, and sometimes it works.
Did most people think that the race was done when Cancellara went away and had a 1 minute advantage?
Maybe, yeah. But BMC was pulling with almost the whole team. Then also for Cancellara was helping. And then suddenly they were there when we attacked the muur. And everybody started to believe in it. And yeah, it was open again.
And you had to play a waiting game, even down to the final sprint, but you got it just right on the line, and what a feeling.
Yeah, because when Fabian attacked, I just made it up, like, if it took 100 meters more, I think then I wouldn't make it. But after I had to recover a little bit and just make sure that we should stay in the front, and then yeah, the sprint, you never know. I know normally I'm faster than Fabian, but Chavanel, it depends. It was close, but it's enough.
So maybe tonight a couple of good Belgian beers?
Not maybe, probably.
Thank you.
Yo.
This was a remarkable race, and everybody should have been the winner. In fact, I think they all were.